everybody ready downstairs?
I just realized I forgot to do that slide with the consent items on it. But I can do a screen share and just show what the agenda looks
That's
like.
fine. That's perfect. Ready? Good afternoon, everyone. It is Monday, June 2nd, 2025. We are at Carmel City Hall, and we are calling this regular meeting, or special meeting of the Carmel-by-the-Sea City Council to order at 4:30 p.m. City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Councilmember Barron?
Here.
Councilmember Booter?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Delves?
Here.
Councilmember Dramoff? Here. Mayor Byrne?
Here.
All are present. So I'm going to read the information about public comments. Thank you for attending today in person and remotely. Thank you for investing your time and attention to help us managing the city. Today and tomorrow we'll be covering many important issues. This meeting is conducted in a hybrid format. You can view this meeting and participate with comments on Zoom or live stream, or watch this meeting later on the city's YouTube page if you don't wish to make a public comment. During special city council meetings, public comments are only held for items listed on the agenda. Today we have the consent agenda process and 3 orders of business, and 1 closed session item for which public comment will be accepted after questions from council. We'll first hear comments from those present in person, followed by Zoom participants. While stating your name is optional, it helps us accurately reflect your participation in the meeting minutes. Remote or in-person participants who do not comply with the requirements of the Brown Act will be muted.
All right, thank you. If I could make a correction to that, and I wrote it, so I'll take the blame. The closed session is tomorrow, I believe, so we won't be having a closed session, which is good for everyone. All right, so we're going to start right off with the consent agenda. And items on the consent agenda are intended to be routine in nature and normally do not require discussion or independent action. However, to make sure that members of the council or the public thoroughly understand and are in favor of each item, anyone may ask that an item be considered individually for purposes of council and public comment. Unless an item is pulled for discussion, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended action. As I say every time, those of you who want to have a good understanding of what is going on in your city, I highly recommend you do a quick review of the first 3 of these items every month. I'll now read a quick summary of each item as a reminder for everyone. I believe we're going to put them up on the screen.
Reese, can you show the Zoom screen?
Okay. Number 1, May 5th, 20th, and 21st special meeting minutes, and May 6th regular meeting minutes. Number 2, April 2025 monthly reports. Number 3, April 2025 check register summary. 4, a letter authorizing the County of Monterey to execute all documents necessary to continue to implement the annual used oil payment program on behalf of the city during fiscal year 2025-26. Number 5, Resolution 2025-043, authorizing a free day use of the Sunset Center Theater and Lobby for the Carmel Foundation's annual meeting. Number 6, Resolution 2025-044, authorizing the city administrator to execute Amendment Number 1 to the construction contract with Coastal Paving and Excavation, Inc. for added construction services associated with the draining system repairs projects in the amount of $95,190.57. Number 7, Resolution 2025-046, authorizing a cost-sharing agreement between the City of Carmel-by-the-Sea and County of Monterey for the pavement rehabilitation of the portion of Ocean Avenue between just west of Cabrillo Highway, California State Route 1, also known as Pacific Coast Highway, and Carpenter Street, with a budget of $400,000. Resolution number 8, Resolution 2025-047, approving a list of streets to be resurfaced in fiscal year 2025-26, partially funded by SB1, the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017. Number 9, Resolution 2025-048, modifying Policy C94-01, financial policies for updates to the city's budgetary guidelines and reserve policies. Number 10, Resolution 2025-049, rescinding a notice of merger recorded with the county on July 14, 2004, and approving a land use regulatory jurisdiction agreement and covenant and agreement to hold property as one parcel. And number 11, adopt Resolution 2025-050, authorizing the city administrator to execute Amendment Number 1 to a professional services agreement with Regional Government Services Authority for a not-to-exceed amount of $78,000 and extending the term through June 30th, 2026 for payroll consulting services. Do any members of the council wish to pull an item?
I'd like to pull items 6 and 7, please.
Okay. Item 6 and 7. Anyone else?
I wanted to pull 7 as well.
Okay, I wanted to pull 6 and 7, so we're good. How about anybody from the public? Would you like to pull an item? We have 6 and 7 pulled already.
I want to comment on an item. Now or later?
You would just pull an item, and then you'll have a chance to make a comment. Which number?
Number 6.
Number 6. It's already pulled, so you'll have a chance. All right, good. Anybody else? Last chance. All right, number 6 and 7. All right, so
I'll move to approve the consent agenda, accepting items 6 and 7.
Seconded.
all right, roll call, please.
Councilmember Barron?
Yes.
Councilmember Buder?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Delves?
Yes.
Councilmember Jeremoff?
Yes.
Mayor Byrne?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. We're going to take a look at number 6 right now. Anybody have questions or comments from the council?
Yeah. So this, for the benefit of the public, item 6 relates to a storm drain contract that had a number of different parts, and it relates to specifically a change order for that storm drain work. And I think a lot of it makes sense. Some of it is like $11,000 for a repair, it's second mission and emergency repair that they just kind of tacked on to the existing contract, which makes sense. There's one where it noted discrepancies between the survey and then the actual storm drain alignments, which again, that's unforeseen conditions, which is what merits a change order. There's the Acacia Way drainage issue, which I know folks that live down there. I think that is merited. But I'm also in the construction field, and every time I see a change order, my eyes sort of go to it, and I try to figure out how somebody's trying to put one over on me or what's the issue. And one, I just wanted to, I'm not saying that's the situation here, but I did want to hear from, is Javier here at all? I did want to hear about, I think it's project number 1, which is, I guess it's on 11th Ave. And it says that the field assessment revealed that the pavement was in significantly worse condition than originally estimated. And so I guess my question for Javier is just, it might be one of these things where you can just explain it to me, but isn't that the kind of thing that maybe you should see beforehand, during the bidding process? Just curious if you could give us some more color on that.
So the drainage project development, the scope of it was developed,
a year or two ago. As we got into the actual pre-construction and formulating of the project, the scope of the reconstruction portion, which was on Carmelo and 11th, needed to expand to be able to get flows. So once we started setting up levels and getting the slope set up for drainage to make sure that it made it into the catch basin, we identified that the area was warped in a manner that drainage was not going to make it into the catch basin, which would then create a bigger problem, right? So we had to expand on the limits to make sure that we acquired at least 0.5% slope into that catch basin. So that's why that reconstruction expanded a little bit.
And it makes sense. I mean, the explanation makes sense. It's just, we also have this designed for $150,000 by a group called Neal Engineers. My understanding is you guys also had these folks out there when you bid it. Didn't you also do site walks? Right. And so it's just one of those things where, part of me is you'd think that at some point between the $150,000 engineers and all these folks out there bidding and walking the site that they'd see something with the pavement. But so anyway, I just wanted to ask the question. That was my main one. That one's $19,000 of this, so.
Yeah, related to that, basically the same question, only you skipped over the potholing and all of that. You'd think, I mean, they've been working in this town for a long time. Is that typical that you wouldn't know where utilities and those sort of things are? They obviously didn't move. I'm just concerned that is this going to happen on, we've got a lot of drainage projects to do, and that's, I think, why we're talking about this. How many? $50 million worth? So at some point, we probably need to figure out how we can avoid having these. First of all, it's a delay because it was a problem in the neighborhood shutting streets. I know it impacted me. So
right. So if are you speaking of one specific site or just in general?
Just in general.
We have come into various types of abandoned utilities during the potholing in Santa Fe. That stretch has an abandoned gas line that's basically in the same trench line as we're putting the storm drain in. So when you call the USAs, which is the underground service alerts, they identify the live lines, but there is due diligence that has to take into effect when you're exposing abandoned lines. So PG&E has to be out there and monitor the line and test it, make sure that it's not live. So there is, that being said, the utilities in most of these streets are significantly old. Yeah. So you do run into areas that weren't identified. So yeah, there is extensive potholing. We encompass that in the contract as much as possible. But in situations like in Second and Lincoln on that one, in the design portion, you're able to identify your inver in and your inver out. But the storm drain actually within that area, for some reason, it got constructed a little different than a straight line, right? The road has a significant.
This wasn't an engineering fault of the engineer. It's something we should expect as we're going to continue to. We're anxious to do a lot of capital projects like this, so we should expect to see this sort of thing happening. Just it's part of what happens when you do drainage in a city with old infrastructure.
So expanding on issues when you get subsurface, it's a lot more prevalent. Usually we try to capture everything at the surface, because it's visible. But doing underground stuff, we had COD out there doing videoing for that line, and it was about a day and a half of extra work just because that location, the invert that we had to tie in, we couldn't locate it.
Sounds like there's a reason why there's so many drainage projects that haven't been done, but we're going to attack them as best we can, I think. All right, that's my question on that one. Anybody else? Do you have a question on 6? Anybody else in the public while we're here? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Stephen McClellan.
You have to come up to the microphone. And thank you for reading through the consent agenda items to have a question. We appreciate it.
I've never been to a city council meeting before, so this is a big education. I'm Stephen McClellan. I live on 11th Avenue. I'm right in the middle, right where the drainage went down the street. And I have to commend the city for doing this job. It was terrific. And I also have to give a lot of accolades to the construction company, the Coastal Paving. They were extremely cooperative with us, helpful to us. I can't say enough positive things about the whole project. It was terrific. Now, I have 2 comments, suggestions to maybe somewhat finish the job. The fire hydrant on the corner of 11th and Carmelo is inoperable. There's a big cover over it saying it's no longer functional. That scares me, worries me, and I don't know if there's any plan to get that back into action or not, but that's fairly important in my opinion, and nothing to do, it just has to do with the project. And the second thing, and I've already mentioned this, is the paving. The street is kind of a mess, and it gets a lot of use from traffic from surfers and beachers. It's right down near San Antonio, and now that they have all these patches on it from the drain project, and the little patches come loose after a while, so I would love to see it repaved or serious consideration of some kind of more paving, because right now it's kind of all patched up and doesn't look very good, but it's not going to last very long, I'm afraid. So that's my comment. It's terrific. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for coming to the meeting.
Hi, Shirley Moon. I also live on 11th, and my concern is sort of the approach to the projects. When you close a street down for 3 weeks and do this kind of major work, it seems to me that it makes a lot of sense to really finish the job and complete it with a paving that finishes off what the work accomplished. And I have photos for you to see what the condition is now. This is how it was left. I just took these pictures this afternoon. So when we spend $1,250,000 on a very short part of a street, it seems like maybe we ought to finish the job properly. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Javier, do you have any comments for that? No? Okay. Okay, well, we'll show you the pictures, but the other...
You have a hand raised on Zoom.
You have an... Okay. All right, so no answers to that. Anybody online that wants to talk about this item? Victoria?
Yeah, Victoria Beach, go ahead.
Hi, I guess you all can't see me. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. I just had, I'll take less than 3 minutes to just thank you all. I wanted to thank the council. I know it was the former council, but just for taking so seriously the sort of unintended consequences of all the berming we've doing, that really helped move this along. I wanted to thank Mayor Dale Byrne in particular for convening such a constructive meeting of the minds between all the parties involved. That also really jump-started this into a new level of understanding what was necessary. Obviously, I don't have to tell the council members there that how much I believe in community involvement in general, but I just wanted to point out that this time, involving the neighbors, et cetera, ended up with enormous economies of scale. We're piggybacking off of this construction project that's right around the corner. We found a really good solution with minimal disruption and maximum benefits. And this is not something I normally think about, but from my calculations, we're saving over 10 times the costs that were originally estimated. It was going to be over $150,000 with engineering. It's now down to $14,000. So I really appreciate this approach. And, you know, we couldn't even hire anyone to repave our street and maintain it because of the way the water was flowing on it from the city runoff. And now we can do that. So just really thank you so much for all that, that enlightened approach to solving this problem.
Thank you, Victoria, and thank you for the nice letter that your neighborhood group sent to the city this morning. We appreciate that. All right, so anybody has anything further to say about number 6 before we move to number 7? Okay. Number 7 is the cost-sharing agreement between the City of Carmel-by-the-Sea.
You want to do them both at once? Or
Yeah, we'll do both at once. I'm assuming we have questions not to do it, so let's just try to do them both at the same time. Anybody have a question about number 7?
Yeah, I haven't had the benefit of my weekly meeting with the city administrator yet. Otherwise, I would have asked this question. But it wasn't 100% clear to me. The $400,000, is that just our portion, or is it the entire project? And then in the actual contract with the county, it mentioned being the city being reimbursed. And so, if you could just kind of explain the setup of how much is it and who's paying for what on this?
The short answer is the county's paying for everything, sir. Good. And it's fully my intention to ask them to pay for our staff time as well, that we put in the level of effort. And this is, again, a legacy project from the previous council. Obviously, we've got several, we're not an island. We've got several entrances into the village, one of which being Ocean Avenue, which is in pretty rough shape in the county portion, even rougher than our pavement. And so Javier spent a lot of hours coordinating this. And this project, I don't think was scheduled to be paved by the county until 2027. And so we worked with Supervisor Daniels and her predecessor to get this before the county. And so again, the $400,000 additive will be as part of our big bid package that we're poised to go out to bid for, and we'll be reimbursed in full with the county. So the coordination has not just been with our city and the county, but also our city and Caltrans as well, because they have their own standards, and Highway 1 obviously is a state highway. So fully reimbursable, to answer your question, sir.
Nice work. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody from the public have a comment or question about this one? All right. I'd just like to add to that this is an example of a resident being concerned about the status of our road coming into the town. A fellow named John Comer, and he called me at one point before I was in office and said, "Can you help me with this?" And I said, "I'm really busy. I don't have time." And I didn't think it was possible to do anyway. And he took it on himself to coordinate with Javier or with Rob Culver, I think. And he went out and met with the head of public works for the county and had a 2-hour meeting. And it sort of came to the council. And it didn't happen last year, but he kept it going. And it was Chip. It was a lot of people that made this happen. Yeah. And it's a good example of us working as a team. And it's going to be spectacular when that road is done, and a lot of people are going to be happy about it. So thank you to everybody that took part in that. So I think it sounds positive for both 6 and 7. So somebody want to make a motion?
Can I have just 2 seconds for a comment? So Javier is exactly correct. When you have 100, and this is for the benefit of the public as well, when you have a 100-year-old city, anytime we put a spade in the ground, we find something we didn't know was there. So potholing is certainly a part of our repertoire. The last couple of years, the council has been creating a capital improvement project contingency, because invariably, again, no matter how good our estimates are, they often bids come in a little bit higher. So that's why we have the contingency. We've built it into next fiscal year's budget for your consideration for tomorrow as well. The hydrant, the gentleman on 11th spoke. The hydrant's just bagged right now. So once we make sure that the water is tied in correctly, that bag will be removed. And it'll be fully functional. And then we'll take a look. Thank you for Mrs. Moon. She sent a very nice email about her work with coastal paving as well. And we thank coastal paving. We really appreciate the nice comments as well. But I'll take a look at the pavement and with Ken and our public works director. If you haven't met him, please meet him, and we'll see when that's scheduled for repaving in total, whether we can get some hot mix and deal with some of the cracking and spalling that I see here. So that's all I got, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. I move to approve items 6 and 7 on the consent agenda.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Barron?
Yes.
Councilmember Buder?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Delves?
Yes.
Councilmember Jeremiah?
Yes.
Mayor Byrne?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move into orders of business. We've got a resolution 2025-051 ratifying appointments to the Community Activities Commission, Harrison Memorial Library Board of Trustees, Historic Resources Board, and the Forest and Beach Commission. Nova, would you like to present your report?
All right, so I'll give a little background on this item. Board and commission members generally serve 4-year terms, except with the exception of Harrison Memorial Library, which serves 3-year terms. Terms of our boards and commissions are all staggered to ensure that no more than 2 seats expire on the same board or commission every year. Every year before term expirations, the city advertises openings and accepts applications. Incumbents with expiring terms are also invited to reapply if they want to be considered for a consecutive term. We received 17 applications, including from incumbents, and everybody was interviewed by the mayor and mayor pro tem in April and May. And after these interviews, the mayor and mayor pro tem made their recommendations based on qualifications. So I'll go through the list of recommendations. First is the Community Activities Commission, which actually had essentially no members. So the recommendation is to appoint Ellen Martin, Jeff Meacham, Judy Refuerzo, Maria Roos, and Katie Anea. And you'll see that the terms are staggered so that we don't have all 5 members' terms expiring at the same time. For the Harrison Memorial Library Board of Trustees, the recommendation for appointment is Billy Farina and Donna Jett. For the Historic Resources Board, the recommendation is Bobby Voris. And for the Forest and Beach Commission, the recommendation is to appoint Harry Ross. So appointments to boards and commissions must be ratified by resolution of the City Council. And the resolution that's included in the packet, if it's adopted, it will appoint all the recommended appointees I just mentioned. However, a motion could be made to do something different. And that's it. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you know? Could you tell us which of the recommended people live in the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea?
Yes, I can look that up. It might take me a few minutes. Do we want to do other questions or public comment while I look that up? Okay. All right. I'll get that information.
While that's happening, any other questions?
I had a quick comment.
Go ahead.
Or sort of a question. It's sort of a question. The sort of the John Krischer one for the Library Board of Trustees. I just wonder. I wonder if we're making a mistake on that one. You know, he lived here for 31 years. He was actually a long haul truck driver, and he used to rent audiobooks from the library and take them on his long haul truck rides. A super dedicated guy. Like, I've gone in a couple times into the children's library and have seen him in the lobby reading every past set of board minutes from the Library Board of Trustees going back to 1926. And, so he's very dedicated to the library. And, during this whole process, folks will remember that, it was a little bit of a process with the Library Foundation, the city, and the Library Board of Trustees. And one of the things that I appreciated about John is he did stand up for the city, and he's not the kind of guy who's sort of interested in stewarding his social capital. I think it's really easy in those kind of positions to kind of just go with the flow. And I think, he's just motivated to kind of do what's best for the community. And I think at the end of the day, owing to some of what he did in terms of standing up, and, I think Jeff did as well, I think we wound up with a better situation for the city, with a contract that I think protected the city better. It was a little bit painful to sit here and negotiate it all, but at the end of the day, I think it was a better solution. And so I always appreciate people who, have that kind of backbone. And so anyway, I just wanted to see if you guys might be willing to potentially reconsider that one. But
This whole process was interesting, fun, actually. I mean, we had 17 this round, and actually we interviewed another 9 or 10 in January when actually your former seat and my former seat opened up. So it's terrific to have 25 people raise their hand, and we had incumbents raise their hand, but just a lot of new people wanting to come in. And all credit to John. I saw John on the street the other day and thanked him for all his service, and he was in good spirits and said he was already going to be part of the Friends of the Library and was going to find a path to continue to help the library there. I know I won't speak for Dale, although we talked a lot about this after interviewing every person. That when you got, in this case, 22 new people raising their hand to want to be part of a board, I was inclined to first ask the question: is the board stable without reappointing an incumbent? And secondly, if it is, and I've got a great new candidate, my inclination was to go with new. And it wasn't meant to be disrespectful to the incumbent in any way, but it just to, I think we have to build a bench for future city councilors. I think our commissions are that bench, and I think we need to operate a big tent and invite as many people to join us in that capacity as possible. So that was kind of the thought process, Hans.
Well said. I have to say that was not an easy phone call. I made 17 phone calls, and that one was tough. It was tough. And your comments are well taken. And I thank John and Phil, who both did not get reappointed to the Library Trust. And I'm hoping they can still be a great assistance to us, because we've got a lot of work to do. We're about to get the architect contract signed, and then the project starts, and it's going to be a lot of work and a lot of decisions to make along the way. but thank you for your comment. I appreciate it. Okay,
I have the answer. The applicants that live in the sphere of influence and not in city limits were Gerald Montmorency, Billy Farina, Philip Pardue, and I guess it was just those three. And then everyone else lived in the city limits. And so Farina is the only one that's being appointed that lives in the public sphere of influence. Basically means Carmel Woods and Carmel Point. So for some of these boards, that's allowed.
Yeah, he lives on the Point.
Yeah,
Billy does.
I'll just Hans, I appreciate what you said, and I do agree with so much of it. And John is such an honorable, just decent, great citizen that we're so proud of to have people like that in our community. I'm afraid, and it will be a loss that he's not on the board, but I'm afraid now that we've already announced the people, it's really hard to pull back and make those kind of changes. And I certainly respect the decision that Bob and Dale made. About getting new people as well. It's a tough call, but we do thank John incredibly for the work and the service he's done to our community.
And Phil as well. Okay. Any other?
Yeah, I would just echo Hans and Alessandro's comments and thank John and Phil for all of their work.
Thank you. Any others? Public comments? Anybody from the public like to say something about the appointments?
Yeah.
Nancy Toomey?
Nancy, go ahead.
Yes, hi. Nancy Toomey here, speaking as a resident. Regarding the board and council recommendations, great people are recommended, and we should all welcome their new volunteer service as official community participants for years to come, and this is great. My question is on the reinstatement of the Activities Commission. I personally attended or participated in these meetings when they were in place prior to COVID for at least 2 years, maybe more, lose count, prior to COVID shuttering their activities and therefore the commission. But when in full force from the outside, in my view, with the skills and work of the city staff, they have a very efficient approach to what they do on a regular basis. They always craft after action reports and adjust learnings from each execution. They work collaboratively with all of the organizations, Carmel Chamber, Visit Carmel, Women's Club, the Carmel Residents Association, to name only a few, but of course we know there are lots of organizations out throughout the city that contribute to all of our great quality of life. But in any case, the city staff, activities team, and their supporting cast of public works and safety and the like, they do their routine magic now without a commission to manage, which consumes cycles, to do just that. So I'm simply confused as to why a commission is needed as an extra responsibility when the city's teams are already stretched. I'd like to understand why this is being reinstated at this time. To me, this is not broken, nor a gap needing attention, and doesn't need fixing. So just some more clarity on that is requested. Thanks.
Thank you, Nancy. And Nancy and I were, for a long time, some of the only people to attend those meetings. So I understand what you're saying. Any other people from the public have a comment before I answer that from my viewpoint? All right, so we'll bring it back for comments. Anybody have a comment about it before I talk? Is that a no? It's a no from everybody. Okay, so it's a good question, Nancy. And as far as I know, I could be corrected because I wasn't on the council at the time, but I don't believe that the commission was ever disbanded. I think everybody termed out and there was no quorum, so the meeting stopped happening. Chip, you might want to add a little color before I say a few more things about the future.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I wasn't expecting to, but several years ago now, the council created a special event policy and ceded most of the authority for the approval of special events to Ashley, Ms. Wright's here, who's our dual-hatted library and community activities director. So I think that the workload for that body kind of shrunk, Mr. Mayor. And they did a lot of postmortems, right? Did a lot of reviews of how events went, and there was feedback, and we solicited feedback on special events from the community that was digested by again the committee, and then they provided some general guidance to Ashley. But I think you're right. I think a lot of their role just had kind of shrunk away. Ashley, how did I do? What did I miss? You want to say anything to?
To echo what you said, Chip, we had a special event policy that was superseded by a new section of the municipal code so that we're in compliance with First Amendment rights. So instead of events being approved by the commission, new events in particular, or the city council, for us to meet that First Amendment need, we need to be able to move quickly with, and I think this is part of our customer service in general, being responsive to event applications. And so it did change the dynamic of the Community Activities Commission. Not to mention we had been through 2 or 3 cycles of strategic planning, for which you were there, Mr. Mayor, and as was Ms. Toomey, and we kind of reached the end of things that were within our reach to do. So, for instance, one of the things that was on there was social media. This is something that the council's now done with social media policy, but it was something that we wanted to see happen but couldn't necessarily make happen at the commission level. So this will be an interesting iteration to see the community activities kind of come back, because it wasn't just lack of quorum, it was lack of things to discuss and to move action on. One of the things that I've seen, which is so gratifying coming back from the pandemic, is not so much a question of, and this is feedback that I hear and I know others in community organizations do as well, there's not enough happening in town. I'm bored. It's, why didn't I know this was happening? So this will be a topic of conversation for the new commission for sure.
Yeah, if I might add, and Ashley and I have had a discussion about this, and I have to say I think we were both pretty excited about the potential, and as we sort of reinvent what this commission does, we have a really dynamic city at this point with a lot of volunteer organizations that are highly effective. We had hired Tom Ford to help coordinate that, and he immediately became highly productive in doing amazingly valuable things within Public Works, and that role sort of faded away. So I'm hoping personally that this commission can help with that effort, because coordinating that can make us even more effective in volunteer groups. In addition, I just hear from a lot of people that we might have too many activities, or like Ashley said, they didn't know they were happening, although we have the Friday letter. And just smoothing out that whole process, I think just expecting staff to do that by themselves, I don't think is highly effective. But if we put people on this committee, that one of the first things they're going to do, I believe, Ashley, if I'm not correct, is to have this discussion. Like, how can we make the city better in terms of activities and things like that? We have some of the people are in the room here, and they're very excited to play an active role in rejuvenating this commission, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, I think that Bob and I felt that it was useful, and it just sort of took a life of its own, and here it is. So we're gonna make the best of it, and we'll see what happens. I think it's a valuable thing. Thank you, Nancy, for bringing that up, though. It's a good discussion. All right, anything else anybody has before we close this out? I think it's time to make a resolution to accept the nominations, the appointments. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll move, hold on, what are we at? I'll move to approve Resolution 2025-51, ratifying appointment to the various boards and commissions.
Second?
I have some comments
Okay.
to the motion. A couple things still.
Are you seconding it, sir, to comment?
Dale did. The mayor did.
I didn't second.
Oh, so sorry. I thought you did.
He was asking for a second.
All right, I'll second. Go ahead.
Yeah, a couple things I've heard are still sort of rattling around in my brain. One was Councilmember Delves' comment that commission appointments should be stepping stones to the council, and that's something I really agree with, and I've talked about before. And it rankles me a little bit that that we had a lot of applications for the Harrison Memorial Library Board of Trustees that were from residents, especially Mr. Krischer, who has dedicated so much time to his library, and that he has been passed over in favor of someone who does not live in the city. So that is just rattling around in my brain. And then Councilmember Dramov made the comment that it's too late, and it's not too late. Like, this is the avenue that we have been provided, that the council has provided to express, this is like the Senate. This is the avenue that the council has been provided to comment on these things. And if we're not prepared as council members to comment or act on the things that come out in the agenda, then we should just not do this. And we should just take this stuff out of the municipal code and just let the mayor and the mayor pro tem, let the mayor basically appoint who they want. And I'm not, I think this stuff is in the municipal code for a reason. And I think our input is valuable. And so I would make a substitute motion that we approve all the appointees with the exception of Mr. Farina.
I'll second that.
So the procedure here, Mayor, would be that you would vote on the substitute motion first, and if that passes, then it passes. And if it doesn't, then you would vote on the original motion.
All right. Can we have discussion?
Yes.
All right.
No, would you still have the applications? Like, could you give us a quick rundown of the biography of Mr. Farina? 'Cause I know they were all included in the agenda packet, but I don't think we have it with us right now.
I can pull it up.
I can pull it up as
Thanks.
well, ma'am, if that's helpful. Just give me a second, please. Let's see who wins. Let's see if Nova beats me as usual.
Oh, it's on.
It's in the document. All right, what do we have here? Adams. The alphabetized Nova?
No.
Blomgren. Are you there, Nova? Tell me when you get there.
Probably the same spot,
Chapman.
Mr. Farina's application is on page 356 of the packet.
Billy
Should I do a
Farina.
screen share or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. There's 3 pages, so see if I can.
Can you make it a little bit larger?
Trying to.
I'm sorry.
And Nova, again, of the candidates, who were the 3 that were sphere of influence?
The applicants that live in the sphere were Gerald Montmorency, Billy Farina, and Philip Pardue.
Yeah.
Everyone else lives in the city.
So let me bring out so we can look at Mr. Farina's application. What I'll say is I found him to be one of the most impressive candidates that I interviewed out of the 25. He's got really a great career behind him, and what particularly struck me was his experience really with project work at scale and dealing with a lot of complexity, and that as I thought about what we've got coming with this library project, that I think that's exactly what we need to have on the Library Board of Trustees, so that we can make sure that that board is involved in that project with perhaps the best and brightest skill set that we can have. So that was my motivation with Mr. Farina. And in my mind, he was replacing Mr. Perdue as one sphere of influence person for another sphere of influence person. It was important that we kept that balance. I didn't want to go in the other direction. Then the other candidate that is being proposed is Donna Jett. She is a city resident, proposing to replace Mr. Kirshner, who is also a city resident.
Yes.
And again, no disrespect to anyone was intended. New faces, new skill set, and I thought the skill, given where we're going, the skill set we need.
I mean, I can't say I'm totally comfortable having an HR discussion in a public meeting, but that's what transparency is all about. And there's some other things I could say, but I choose not to say it in this meeting. I mean, Bob and I spent a lot of time doing this, and I would hope that you would respect our opinion. He's a high energy guy. I mean, if you haven't met him, you should. I mean, there were things that took place prior to this that were not positive, and I was witness to it. So, but I prefer not to talk about it if I could. I mean, again, I don't feel comfortable doing this in public.
No, I don't either.
If you want to take this offline and we'll have a closed session to talk about it, I think it's a better way to do something like this.
I don't think we can do that, can we?
I don't know.
We have a substitute motion on the table.
I'd just like to say, I didn't come here for this discussion whatsoever, but I happen to know Billy Farina from being a local, and I think he's a fantastic person.
Sir,
does that matter?
If I ask you to.
This is all, okay.
If I ask you to.
I'm sorry. I just want to say, if you guys haven't met him and you didn't have the chance to interview him, it may not be an emotional decision, but one that's good for the community, because you should meet him first.
Thank you. You're sort of out of process. We had a public comment area, but let's take a vote.
Yeah, Jeff's right. That's how this works.
So you're voting on the alternate motion now, the one by Mr. Barron and seconded by, I think, Mr. Booter.
Okay. Councilmember Barron?
Yes.
Councilmember Booter?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Delves?
No.
Councilmember Jaromoff? I'm really torn on this. I know this is not the place for commentary. I find Mr. Krischer did a fantastic job, and I would like to see him stay. On the other hand, I don't want to disrespect the decision that you two have made, and you're right to, have new people that you want as part of it. I'm totally torn. It is unusual for us to overrule the mayor and mayor pro tem, but I think John and his experience does offer a lot. So I will go with John, although I do respect your decision.
That's fine.
So it's a yes. That's a yes vote, ma'am?
Yes.
I should clarify that the motion was to approve the appointments other than Billy Farina.
So it wasn't to appoint someone in place of Billy Farina?
Yeah, the municipal code, if I may, the municipal code says that you have the power to, this has come up before. I mean, you have the power to write the name on the piece of paper. And I believe in that. And, let me say without any disrespect, and certainly no disrespect is meant to Mr. Farina. Like I should have said that up front. But the power to write the name on the piece of paper is yours, not mine. And so my intent was to simply approve all of them with the exception of that one.
And did you finish the roll call, Ms. Romero?
Mayor Byrne?
No.
No. Okay.
So the alternate motion passes 3-2, and that was the slate with the exception of Mr. Farina.
So now we have an open seat.
Pardon me?
Now we have an open seat because he didn't reappoint. His motion didn't reappoint anybody.
Correct. And this would be the point where Mr. Barron, what he just said was the municipal code's direction of the mayor pro tem providing a slate or recommendation to the rest of the council for adoption.
So can I ask the city attorney, would you agree with Jeff's interpretation of the city code?
I don't have it right in front of me, but that's my understanding. I mean, I don't have it here just to read from it, but it's my understanding that's the way the code operates.
So I'm confused. What?
I am too.
So I guess the question, Mr. Purick, is can the mayor pro tem put forth an additional slate at this point in time for that one seat on the Library Board of Trustees?
Yes. If they choose to do so, or they could bring it back at a future date.
We'll bring it back at a future date.
So the motion was that the mayor pro tem will consider whether to repost the position for additional interviews or bring back a candidate at a future meeting. So I think that concludes our business on this item, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you. All right, so we're to number 13. Discuss city policy C89-02, city council meetings, orders of council, agenda packets, minutes of meeting and agenda distribution, and consider motion to approve proposed changes to policy or provide other direction to the city administrator. It's, I think, an agenda item that's going to be covered by our city attorney.
This is one where we got direction from you, and this is bringing back the changes, I think, item that was continued on several occasions. Mr. Purick, yeah, the packet should be in, you have the...
I'm ready.
Sorry, you're looking for it.
But thank you for introducing.
Sure.
Yes, as Chip has just said, this was an item that has been previously discussed by the council, and then based on your recommendations and input at that point, we're coming back for some further discussion. The first slide that you see here is a list of the proposed changes that there appeared to be consensus from the council at your previous meeting. And on the first item with regards to this provision, there was, you did not need a policy with respect to the mayor and the mayor pro tem meeting with the city administrator, so that doesn't need to be there. The second item is under meeting procedures. This would require the presentations of slides or PowerPoints to be made available to the city council and the public by 5 p.m. on the Friday before the meetings. And I guess, Mayor, I should ask for your direction. I can go through these particular changes, and we can then stop and have a conversation about them, or I can I can identify it and then you can talk about it.
Just go through them quickly.
Continue through them, okay. The third item would be to set specific start times for items that are likely to draw high public interest. And typically what would happen here is there would be a time set, let's say 6 o'clock, and whatever item the council was on, they would complete that, and then as close to 6 o'clock as they could get started on that item. The fourth item would be to have an acknowledgement of receipt of written public comments, including by email and letters. Number 5 is that the mayor will ask for the number of people who wish to speak on a particular item and may adjust the public comment time accordingly. The standard currently is 3 minutes per person. Number 6 would be to include general public comment on regular agenda items, but not have a general public comment period on special meeting agendas. Public comment would be limited to the item that's before the council at that time. Number 7 would be to ask speakers to avoid repeating prior comments and instead to express their agreement with previous comment. However, this is a request only, and if the speaker wishes to elaborate and repeat what has been said by a prior speaker, they certainly have the right to do that. Number 8 is would be to add language to the City Council agendas, which would read, with respect to the Brown Act requirements, that general public comments must be on matters related to the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body, that comments on agenda items must relate to that agenda item, and anyone who does not follow those requirements of the Brown Act in person or via teleconference would be muted. Number 9 is to add to the meeting protocols the option for some council discussion before you go out to public comment. Number 10 is a curfew, and that would be implementing this was the time that was mentioned by the council, but you could certainly make it earlier or later as you choose, or not at all, would be to implement a 9:30 meeting curfew. And then what I've seen with some other cities is that the council, you would then have the option to vote to continue the meeting past 9:30 p.m. if you chose to do so. And number 11 would be to hold appeal hearings on a separate meeting date during the day if possible. And once again, that is within the discretion of the council as to whether or not you wish to do that, but it is an option that could be available. So those were the proposed changes as I heard them at the last council meeting. Let's just go to the next slide. Now, these are some other changes that were discussed, and I've put them under a different heading here, which is other possible changes for discussion. So the ones that I just went through, the 11, were intended to capture what I understood to be the direction of council with respect to those particular items. These other possible changes are ones that you may, again, wish to consider. The action item for tonight is not to approve any of these particular changes, but to give direction as to which ones you wish to have come back to you at a future meeting with the appropriate interlineations or changes to the policy together with a resolution to approve that change. Okay, here's the other possible changes that were discussed when we last addressed this issue. Number 1 was for extraordinary business items to keep them to a 3-minute limit. Number 2 is to consider adding a special meeting later in the month, or perhaps to start meetings earlier in the day. I heard 3 p.m. is one suggestion. 3 is to consider the Monterey meeting model with an afternoon session, general public comment, a dinner break, closed session, and then an evening session with another general public comment period. 4 would be consider ordering public comments by duration so that those that would limit themselves to 1 minute could speak first, 2 minutes next, and 3 minutes at the end. There are no provisions in the Brown Act which expressly allow such a preference, so if that's the direction of the council and you wish to do that, there's going to be some further research that's going to be necessary. Next slide, please. Again, I'm here continuing with other possible changes. 5 would be to consider whether the city can give preference during general public comment to city residents. Again, there are no provisions in the Brown Act which expressly allow for such a preference. So if that's the direction of council, then further research is going to be needed. The next possible change would be to consider the Coastal Commission process of going online before the meeting to register for public comment. And as I've noted here on the slide, that the Coastal Commission is a state agency, and the meeting procedures are governed by the Bagley-Keene Act instead of the Brown Act, which applies to local agencies. So if this is the direction of council, that you want to do something similar to what the Coastal Commission does, then there's going to be further research that's going to be necessary to see whether or not that would be permitted under the Brown Act. Number 7 would be to consider a time limit for the general public comment. The current policy does reserve to the council the right to limit duration of public appearances to 30 minutes total. Change number 8 would be to consider setting general public comment for non-agenda items at the end of the regular city council meetings to allow the council to complete the agenda first. Next slide. So where we are at this point would be for you to discuss the changes as I've recited them. And as I indicated in my previous comments, there's the first slug of comments, if you will, proposed changes. I think there were about 11. And then the second category was possible changes. And then it would be a motion. I should rephrase it. Instead of a motion to approve the proposed changes, it would be a motion to direct the city attorney and staff to return to the council with the resolution approving the proposed changes, or provide other direction to the city administrator.
Okay, any questions from council to Brian?
I've got a question, but we don't have the text in front of us, so it's going to make it difficult. But there's confusion on item 1 about the agenda finalization. We even received a letter from a member of the public on that. And I briefly spoke to Chip about it, so could we clarify that?
I'm sorry, which change are we talking about?
Well, the agenda finalization, because it makes it seem as if the mayor and mayor pro tem don't have a role anymore, the way, and then that's crossed out, and so there's just confusion over that. If we can just clarify that for the public.
Yes, the reason for that change is because the policy should not specify that the mayor and mayor pro tem will be engaging in that practice, and instead they can do that on an informal basis.
And just one other item, this is minor, I don't know if we want to include it, but on item 4, acknowledge receipt of written public comments, emails, letters, can we say by the city clerk?
Yes,
okay.
And I believe that change is, thank you for asking that question. That is one of the changes that's in the red line, which is one of the attachments, would be for the city clerk. As a matter of fact, it's change number 4. It's under heading B, second bullet. Says the city clerk will announce that the city has received and posted written comments for any agenda item.
Okay.
So it is there.
Got it. Thank you.
Anybody else?
No questions.
Okay. Do we have anybody from the public that has a question?
Maria Bruce. Couple of questions, clarifications basically. One is, I think the methodology that's being used right now is very good. You publish your agenda very early. You give us a copy of the presentations. That makes it easier for us to follow. All the documentation is provided in general. It's working really well. So congratulations in that regard. The only comment I have, or a suggestion, I was thinking, maybe you can ask us to provide written comments. The only concern I have with that, if we provide you written comments before even coming forward, whether it's 1 minute, 2 minutes, and we can save your time, 3 minutes, will be that we get feedback standing here and we get responses from the different members of the regarding of the topic. The problem is that back to the feedback from the city clerk acknowledging receipt of the document, I don't get feedback from saying, thank you for your comments, and by the way, Jamie's saying this and that and that about this about the budget, or you're wrong about this or something of a real response. So that would be my concern about suggesting feedback, which is in writing by the city clerk, acknowledging receipt, yes, but the good news about coming forward is that we can receive the feedback immediately and say we were missing something or our comment doesn't have any justification. So I would suggest that could be considered in some way so that we feel comfortable that our comments are either taken into account or consideration, or why waste our time reading documents if those are not valid? Does that make sense? I just think it's saving your time as well as our time. That would be my only comment. And the other comment I do have an appreciation is probably the 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute makes sense, because we can save your time by doing that. I think that will be appropriate, but I don't think everyone has a sense of how much time they're going to spend speaking, because people divert. So I don't know if you can keep them tied to that timeline. That would be my only concern. Your 3-minute light is always very clear, but the 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute light, I don't know if it's going to keep everybody on schedule. So I don't know if that really will work. That'll be my 2 comments.
Okay, thank you. If I might comment on that, Maria, the one of the challenges we have is city council members is we get your emails, but we can't say reply all and everybody knows what we said to you, because that could be a Brown Act violation. So we have to be careful about that. I'm sure each of us might respond to you, but you're never going to see us all saying we heard you. So, you know, it is a challenging thing for you. So we appreciate that. We appreciate your comment. Any other comments now?
I have some comments.
Go ahead.
First, to Maria, I didn't like any of your comments, so there's your feedback. I have 3 substantive comments. I'm sort of with Steve Hilliard and I think Alessandra on number 1, and I don't know, you know, the staff report says that we can take out the final meeting between the mayor and the mayor pro tem and the city administrator, because that just happens. But I think it's a sign, I think it's a good sign to the public that the policy says the mayor's in charge. Like, I think that's sort of what that's what the policy is, and I think the sign off needs to be the mayor. So would be generally opposed to that, generally opposed to item number 1. Item number 9 is add the meeting procedures option for some council discussion before the public comments. I think I said this before. I won't vote for a policy change that allows this at all. I think that the public has the right to make their comments first without being sort of prejudiced by what we say. And I think it's the mayor's prerogative to reopen public comment at some point. And if the mayor would like, you know, I know that Dale has done this before, and I know that Dave used to do this. If the mayor believes that we should focus the conversation on one aspect of a topic or whatever it is that's being discussed, I think it's the mayor's right to reopen public comment. But I really have to insist that I believe that the public gets to go first before council members speak. I think we ask questions, but we don't. And I know I can be occasionally loud, occasionally sort of forthright, and sort of my questions can blend into comments. But we need to do a good job of not making comments before the public speaks. That's important to me. And then item number 10, curfew, implement 9:30 p.m. meeting curfew. Council must vote to continue the meeting past 9:30. We haven't done this before. And I know that some councils do this, and I think that the limit that I've seen in other councils is later than 9:30. Generally, though, I think they probably start a little bit later. But it makes me really uncomfortable to sort of go down this road. Like, I'm not, people come to meetings, like people rearrange their schedules and come to meetings, and I would hate for someone to come to, like tomorrow night we're going to hear the green waste. The green waste thing is like I think is the last thing on the agenda. And I would hate for the green waste, something like the green waste rate increase to be at the end of the agenda, and have it show up at 10 o'clock and have there be only one or two people in the audience and say, no, we're not going to do this, and inconvenience the 1 or 10 people. I might be willing to, I've said that I'm a no on number 9, and I'm a probable no on number 1. I could be convinced on number 10 if if it was a 4-to-1 vote and not a 3-to-2 vote, if it was a real, like, yeah, we really need to get out of here, if it's 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that, I could be convinced if the policy was a super majority and not a majority. But I'm really conflicted about item number 10.
All right, if I could ask Jeff, to clarify your number 9 comment, do you think, I like the way you worded that we can already decide to go back to the public again, which could accomplish the same sort of thing, giving them another shot to comment back to us. Do you think that should be put in as a policy, that's okay?
I don't think, I'm not the Robert's Rules of Orders expert, and I don't know, but I think you already have the power to do that. And I would add, before Mr. Pierce speaks, I would add that, one of the things that I like, I'm always sort of amazed, and this happens at least once a meeting, where someone in the public says something that sort of jars something loose in my head. And I would really hate, part of the reason I'm really opposed to item number 9 is I would really hate to, sometimes the comments are, off base, but sometimes these off base comments kind of jar something loose. And I would really hate to lose that by having some even any level of council comment and having people sort of lose their nerve when they realize that we're not talking about the thing that they think is important. And I don't want to sort of prejudice public comments with comments from us. So
I get it.
Yeah. So sorry for the long-winded explanation.
Well, you don't like the mayor saying, let's do our comments before, but do you think it should be a policy that we can go back to the public again? You're saying it's not necessary.
I'm saying that it's not necessary for it to be a policy because I think your ability to do that is already encapsulated in Robert's Rules of Orders. But if we wanted to change the policy to say that it's the mayor's prerogative to reopen public comment, which I think you already have the right to do, I would be happy to do that.
Okay.
That would not bother me at all.
All right.
But it's your prerogative, not mine or not anybody else's. It's the mayor's.
Okay, so we can move this ahead. I'm just going to go around this way. Hans, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think those are the same hot buttons for me as well. I think on the agenda finalization, I have some qualms about removing that language too. I know the city attorney is saying it doesn't really serve a purpose, but I like the fact that it makes clear that the agenda for the city is being set by their elected representatives, and I would prefer not to get rid of that one.
So my advice on that would be to have the mayor be the one that makes that decision for what's final on goes on the agenda.
Yeah, and I'm fine if it doesn't specify the mayor pro tem, but in practice. But I do think that the mayor should be listed there in the policy.
And I would. And if I may, since you're talking about this specific issue before we get, I myself would be happy if it was the mayor or his designate, the mayor pro tem. Like I see my impression of your comment, Mr. Pierce, is that you're sort of worried about having both of them be involved. And I would be happy, if Dale, if the mayor's on vacation or has a death in the family or whatever and can't do it, I would be happy having you have a designate if it was someone else.
I can draft the language to accomplish that.
Okay.
I think that's a good solution. On the public speaking, before the council, I think Jeff made some good points. I like the symbolism of that. I mean, we're really here to do what the public is interested in having us do. And, that seems to be the right order of operations to me. It's like, let's listen to the people and then let's, add our own 2 cents, have a discussion and move on. So I think that does make sense. The ability to go back and open it up again for public comment might be nice to clarify that. Yeah. And then lastly, on the 9:30 curfew, there have been times when things have gotten off track and people get hangry and, so it's like we definitely should have planned dinner. But the only concern I have is I sort of like the idea of a curfew. 9:30 may be just a touch early for my taste, but the thing I really don't want to do is say we'll do a 9:30 curfew and then we turn around and say a few months later, well, that means we need to start at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. For all the reasons that I've discussed before, I think that it just limits the types of folks that can actually come to these meetings in a way that I don't think is helpful.
Yeah, on number 1, I agree with these guys. Although I would say, whether it's the mayor and the mayor pro tem, just my experience so far in doing the agenda meetings with the mayor is having two of us is better than one, because we play off each other and challenge each other. So I would suggest that two of us do participate in the agenda setting. So perhaps it's the mayor, and his choice, his or her choice, and in the absence of the mayor, it probably is the mayor pro tem. But and I also, as a result, I kind of like Karen Ferlito's idea of creating some venue for the non-mayor, mayor pro tem, so the other three city councilors, to have a little bit more input on the agenda, and make sure you. The downside of having the mayor in charge of the agenda is it can be abused, and things can be kept off the agenda for long periods of time, and that has happened. And I want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I think by having at least two of us involved, that helps with that. But in general, I would just say we should not have this in there. Yeah, on number 9, I think this was kind of my idea, just because I think sometimes, there are some times when a little bit of comment from us helps the public see that we understand something. But I'm not going to, I think you guys are actually, the optics of what you're suggesting is more appropriate, so I'm fine with that. Curfew, I've been on a council that had a curfew. We just had to vote to extend the meeting. Actually, our curfew was a 6-hour curfew, and no meeting could go past 6 hours. If it went to 6 hours, we had to stop, make a motion to go past 6 hours. We always did. So I'm not sure it's worth much. I'm good with the rest of these.
If I could just take one quick second to clarify, Council. So we're not suggesting that agenda review, which is when the mayor and mayor pro tem sit down with Brandon and Nova and the city attorney and myself and look at the next month. I think it's the finalization, and very rarely does the agenda change dramatically. But if we're talking about making sure the mayor and or the mayor pro tem know whether we've added something to consent or something's fallen off, we do that pretty religiously, and we can continue to do that. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. And then for everyone else's benefit, what we've started to do is send the draft agendas a couple months in advance to the entire council so they get a sense for what things may be coming up. They're not finalized. Nova calls it a forecast, but we try to share those. So anyway, I hope that was some helpful clarification. I'm sorry, ma'am. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, I did share the comments of Jeff and Hans and Bob on that, but although, Chip, your comments do, I think, clarify. I think it's the way it's written, it really makes it seem that the staff is having the final say. And like you said, it's the difference between review and finalization. So if maybe we can tighten that up or clarify that, I think that would be very helpful. Regarding number 9, I also echo what has been said. It's very, very important to hear from the public, certainly before we speak. So, our questions are okay in the beginning, and then, opening up to the public and then council discussion. I think that's an important way that we've done it and should continue to do it in the past. And I'm in support of the curfew, and I think we need to at least give it a try to help keep our meetings in a more timely fashion, because honestly, when you get to 9:30 p.m. and we've been here, 5 hours or so, and sometimes we have a field trip we go to before that at 3 in the afternoon or something, everyone gets tired. You're not at your best. It's harder to concentrate and focus, and it's certainly not fair to the people that also do want to speak on an item, to have to be here for 5-6 hours before they get to speak on it. So I think that just will help things be a little more efficient, and I hope it can work that way.
Can I add something?
Go ahead.
So a couple of things about, we seem to be sort of stuck on the curfew, and I'll note that in the past, when we've had these meetings that have gone on significantly past 9:30, they've almost always involved appeals. So I think that some of the pressure on the 9:30 time will come out, since we have added something about having the appeals be on a separate date. Yeah, I think Yeah, I'm still, I could be convinced either way. 1 and 9 sounds like they're both out. I don't know. Okay.
Okay, so, yeah, I'm going to speak. My only comment on number 1 is I wish, and this doesn't happen, and I don't think it's intentional, so don't take this the wrong way, Chip and Nova, because it's a lot of work to get these agendas put together and get all the information out. It's a lot of work. It would be nice if before it's sent out that at least I see it. Bob and I are fine. But because as opposed to sending it out and I go, oh, you left this out because just typos or whatever. And even if it's a half hour before, because I know you're always up against. So I would ask that so that at least one of us has seen what's going out so we can do a sanity check on it. But otherwise, I think it's working well with Bob and me in the informal meetings that we have at City Hall with Nova. And just so everybody knows, Nova's there, Brian's on the meetings. It's not just the two of us and Chip. And there's some discussion going on. I think it's been highly productive and effective. And we're also willing to listen to all the council people, as Chip is, because he has his weekly meetings. So it's not just Bob and me that are doing this, for sure. Because I see things showing up that I didn't think were going to be on there, and they are. Number 9, it sounds to me like we could just, for future mayors, I hadn't done this before, so for future mayors to know that that's an option, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it just encourages let's listen to the public and make sure they're properly heard. So I would be in favor of putting that in. I also understand what Jeff was saying. The curfew, I'm not sure it's necessary because as mayor, I can just continue an item and we can go home. We probably wouldn't do that if there were 30 people in the room ready to hear it, but we have some control over how long the meetings last, and I'm gonna suggest another one that's probably not gonna be popular again. So I'm good with everything except for those comments. And on the parking lot things that we have there, I've had several people, and I won't mention who, but several people have mentioned to me, is there something we can do to at least let us as council people know how long we've been talking? Because it's easy to go on and you don't realize you just talk for 15 minutes, and that's why we're here for an extra hour. So I don't know the best way to do that. I don't know if we have the timer on for us so we can, I can't see it, but I could see the yellow light. Maybe we set it for 5 minutes, and when the red light goes on, you at least know you've been talking for 5 minutes. I don't know if you want to discuss that. That got turned down the last time I tried it, but I'll try it again because people from the public and others have asked me about that, and I'm sure we're all guilty of it. So I'll throw that out there for discussion. I'm not sure we're at the point where we need to have. Well, we are having breaks, actually. We are bringing in dinner. So we're sort of doing what Monterey does without admitting it. So maybe if we know the meeting's going to go, I thought this meeting would be over by now, but obviously it wasn't. The 5-minute thing did not last 5 minutes. And that's fine, by the way. I think that was a very healthy discussion, and I'm really excited that our council's willing to have that kind of honest discussion. I really am, and it's wonderful. So maybe we should do something like that, where we're actually admitting the meeting's going to go to a point where we should take the break instead of us having to guess when it's going to be and the public guessing when it's going to be. It helps them know when to be here, for sure.
I think that's a really good idea. I think I just have noticed that if we don't take that break, things tend to go off the rails.
Well, it's easy to say we only have this one last thing. Let's just blow through it and get it done, and it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
it just doesn't. Okay.
My only suggestion is sometimes there's a rhythm to a meeting, and it's if you put it at the same time, sometimes you may blow through a couple of items really quickly, and then you've got to break it. I'm joking, of course, at 4:45 p.m. You started the meeting. Rather than saying, if we get through this next item, then we'll take a break. I think you
could you just structure it so that it's at a certain time, and that once you get through whatever item you're on, then you take the break?
That's a nuance on it.
I think that, I'm reminded of, I think it was the consent meeting, the Monday meeting last month that was the problem. That was a problem child meeting, and my recollection of that meeting was not, the problem was that we had not planned for break at all. It wasn't that we had a problem with the time, and I think that we've done a pretty good job. Dave did a pretty good job, and I think Dale's also doing a good job of just, hey, it feels like it's time for a break. And I think that sort of consent, discussion amongst the five of us seems to have worked, right? And if there's always dinner in the back, or there's always a sandwich in the back or something for us, it gets to 6:30 and the next item's going to take an hour and a half. We just have to be religious about taking the break. I think we just have to look out for each other.
Okay, Brian, do you have direction enough?
I think so, Mayor. I've been making notes on everybody's comments about the items. So, and I'll also work with Nova. I'm sure she's been taking good notes too, and we'll put this together, bring it back to you with a red line on the changes that it sounds like there's consensus on, and then along with the resolution.
Okay, great.
My only question was, since we just had this conversation on the curfew, what was your takeaway on what kind of direction did you think you got on the curfew?
Well, the mayor didn't think it was necessary. Jeff didn't think it was necessary. Alessandra was a yes. I don't know that I saw a yes from anybody else. Is there a yes?
Mr. Bruda thought maybe it was a little bit early, maybe doing it at 10.
Well, but we didn't get I don't have firm direction other than what I just said.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. It's just maybe if we could just nail that down, maybe we could come back with something that's more actionable.
I'll be a yes for 9:30.
Okay. So that's,
I'm okay to try. Like Bob said, we can
as a checkpoint.
Yeah.
It's sort of a mental reminder that, hey, we're trying to get out of here.
It's sort of like my setting the clock to 5 minutes.
Yes.
It just tells us that you just use 5 minutes.
Okay, so Brian, the direction I guess then is to go with the 9:30 curfew for now.
well, as long as we've gone to this much trouble, if we could just, so that I'm clear, and I mean, like I said, I've taken notes, but I understood your direction on item 1. On the meeting procedures, presentation of slides, I'm hearing that that's yes. Specific start times, that's a yes, number 3. Acknowledging receipt of written comments, that's a yes. Mayor asking for those, how many want to make a comment? Of course,
yeah,
I could do that.
I'll help you. I think everything except for one, was it which one is it 9 and 10 are a yes?
9 except 10 is a yes.
We enhanced.
But you just left 10 as a yes.
Oh, yes. No, I'm just saying those were the only ones we actually had substantive comments about. And then the last one, though, on number 1, where'd you wind up on number 1, the involvement in?
Number 1 would be that the mayor would have, or his designee would have final authority with regard to the approval of designation, but certainly Mayor Pro Tem can participate in discussions.
Okay, great.
All right. We finished with that? Everybody's had their say. Okay, good. All right. Now we're at a point where it's 6 o'clock. We have an hour subject to go based on the agenda. Do you want to take a break right now? Shorter is better.
Dinner break? Because if we're doing a dinner break, we should have at least 20.
I'd rather just get out of here at 7:15 and
just take.
I'm worried this is going to go on more than an hour, though.
I don't know what it is.
I don't know how long it's going to go on.
Why don't we take a break in an hour?
Okay. Do we need a bio break? You want to take a bio break? Anybody? No? Okay. We're going to take a real quick bio break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to try to get this done. I'll try to move it along as much as I can. Let's do 10 minutes. 10 minutes. We'll be back here at 6:10. Thank you.
Absolutely.
You going to bring up the slide? All right, we're going to bring it back and get moving. Is everybody ready to have a discussion about parking? All right, good.
Mr. Mayor, before we start, I have a question for the city attorney. I just have a bit of a problem with the process on this parking item. I know you weren't at the meeting on May 20th, but we had a workshop, and it was a budget agenda, and we were going to do it then, and that didn't make sense. It wasn't noticed as such, and so we postponed it to this meeting. But what I have a problem with is that there was no material in the agenda packet. There was no material that the public could read, that the council could read. We just got this slideshow this morning. So I think in the name of, good government, open process, having the council be informed, having the members of the public informed, and the Brown Act, that we state what's on the agenda and we give that information to the public so that they can be informed ahead of the meeting. I just have a whole problem with the process, and I was wondering if you could weigh in on that.
Well, I'll respond to you this way, Councilman Dramov. The Brown Act does not require that there be a staff report. It only requires that the agenda state in general terms, a general description of what the item is that's being discussed. Typically, there will be a staff report that's presented on an item in advance, but the Brown Act does not require it.
Okay, but just in the name of good government, I don't think we can make good decisions if we don't have any material that we can read ahead of time, and the public can't understand what we're talking about. I mean, we got a letter, somebody thought this meeting was about in lieu parking, which is another parking issue. So I just think we need more information for us as council members and for the public before we have this meeting. This whole thing feels rushed, and it just feels like we're not doing this the right way, so we can make a good decision.
So my suggestion is that if you wish to inquire of the other council members and the mayor about their feelings on what you just expressed, it's on the agenda, it can be discussed.
I'm fine with that. I would love to hear how others feel about it.
You're on the left.
So I agree with Councilmember Dramov's comments that the way this was sort of served up to us was suboptimal. But I'm hoping to, I've talked about parking personally. I've talked about parking for years, and in fact, at the March strategic planning meeting, I waxed on and on and on and on and on about why we should talk about parking. And it didn't seem to make it into the strategic, didn't seem to make it on the strategic list, which I'm still kind of bummed about. But regardless of whether we make decisions tonight, I'm interested in just hearing. I think the topic of parking is very, very important. And, I agree that it's impossible that would be really difficult to sort of make informed decisions, but I think we can chat a little bit. That's without making decisions.
I agree. It's not it's definitely not best practice. It's not something that I think we should avoid it, going forward. At the same time, I did read about it in the newspaper like a lot of other people. So, it was out there in the water. I had a sense of what, was going to be in it. But I think going forward, I think we should definitely avoid that type of, arrangement. But I do applaud the, taking the initiative and a lot of the creativity that's in here. I think that's really welcome. No, it really is. I mean, I think people want to see that. I think if we can marry that up with the kind of process that you're talking about, I think then that's the sweet spot. So
Let's go.
Okay. Well, all good comments, and we're not expecting big decisions to be made. This is, like you said, it's to kickstart. And I'll just start. I'm going to summarize. I have some more things to say.
Do you mind 1 second? I asked for some copies. They've gone out. Someone asked me for copies. Okay. Okay. Thanks.
So I'll piggyback on Hans's comments, and that was one of my comments. Is I haven't been here for the last 50 years, but I imagine this discussion has been going on for 50 years at least, since there were a lot of cars here. And certainly for the last 25 years, a lot of discussions. I bet hundreds of meetings have been held between the CARB group and the chamber, and we hired some really good consultants back in 2000, and then they came back in 2013, I think a little after that. And we actually had our former police chief do some research, which I never saw. I didn't see the results of that. But a lot of really good work and discussions have been had. And yet here we are 25 years later, and we've actually made the situation worse, not better. We actually designed a parking structure when Ken White, I think, was mayor, and it looked pretty interesting to me, and then nothing happened. So, and I'm part in the process here, but when your self-checkout person at Safeway sees that this is coming up and says, I have to tell you, like half the people that come through here are commenting about the parking in Carmel and saying it's getting downright dangerous, we've got a problem. And we need to do something. And Andrew, you want to come up? We're going to tag team this presentation, and we'll go through it quickly, I promise. There are a lot of slides, and we thought of taking half of them out, but I think it's good for you to see that Andrew and me, to some extent, have really done some interesting research and have a lot of good points to say that some things can be done. The next step beyond this, well, first of all, Jeff made a great point, is somehow we got to this point and parking isn't on the list at all. It's not strategic, it's not on the list. And if we can do one thing tonight, I'd like to get it on the list. In the meantime, we've got Andrew here. Andrew Hooks is a volunteer. He works for Kenny Spilfogle at Flaherty's, and they see things front and center, being in the middle of town, and see all kinds of interesting things happening. And Kenny is he's like the ultimate volunteer. He's involved with lots of things. And so he empowered Andrew, who's a really smart guy, to put some time into looking at this, and then I got introduced to him, and we've gone and developed this presentation. Stephen Summers works for National Parking and Valet, and he owns a company, and he's been a partner with the city in implementing paid parking previously, and he lives for parking. It's his whole life, and he does a lot of valet services for all the events around here, and he's come up with some of the ideas in here. So this is to throw some concepts out, some ideas. We're not asking for approval for them. Some of them I don't even know need approval. Some of them could probably be done at staff level, but hopefully this will spur discussion after we show these slides. So go ahead, next slide. Who's running the show? All right, so we're here to answer the question, should improving downtown Carmel's parking be an urgent or any priority at this point? I mean, I'd like that to be taken care of tonight, and if not tonight, soon, because I think you'll see something needs to be done. And if it is, what immediate action could the city take to improve resident, business, and visitor experience? And again, we don't have to make that decision tonight. Obviously, some discussions will have to be had. Go ahead. So I talked about a lot of this. I don't think we need to get through there. One of the new points in here, though, is that the one thing we have done is we implemented the daylighting law, AB 413, and it was supposed to make the town safer, and it appears that it's made the town less safe, created confusion with all the yellow spaces. Nobody seems to know what they are. And we've done some research, and I've also looked at the letter that Brian sent us a year ago, January, that said we actually have some options to reverse some or all of the changes that were made. Personally, I think that we shouldn't reverse them all, because I think there are some things we could do with red zones instead of yellow zones to make the city safe, but we'll go through some of that as we get through here. The real scary thing is that 2 different methods that were used. There was another resident named Greg Shapiro who did some interesting Monte Carlo simulation with publicly available data, and both ways showed that we likely are losing 10% of our revenue, which means 10% of the revenue for restaurants, for art galleries, for hotels, everything, because people get frustrated and just leave. That translates into about $1 million in sales tax for us. So maybe it's time to test some creative, cost-effective alternatives. So jumping ahead, this is at the end of this presentation that we're going to blow through. These are the high priority things that we came up with after we were doing our research. And again, we're going to talk about these. One of the interesting things is valet parking program. There are lots of parking places in town. We just can't use them. The valet service sort of opens those up. We're going to show you the magnitude of that. There's also a project at Forest Theater that I've detailed to the point where I've given it to Chip, and staff can take a look at it. For a fairly small amount of money, can generate quite a few parking spots and make it safer. Also a paid parking initiative at Del Mar Beach parking lot. That's sort of an outlier, but it's an interesting idea that Stephen brought to us, and I'll let him talk about that. It turns out that there are probably over 350 spots taken up downtown and near downtown by city employees and other employees, and it amounts to 350 spots or more. So that's a big part of our problem. We're not coming here with a solution for that, but we know that that has to be part of the solution. Ride sharing, whether it's using Uber, Lyft, or some van ride sharing with employees, which really looks like an interesting option. We're going to talk about that. And then obviously shuttle services have been talked about, and we have used them for special events, but we need to get more serious about that, and the Chamber's been having some discussions with that. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to Andrew, and he's going to go through these slides quickly, but just to show you there's a lot of detail behind here that we can bring to having further discussions.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak today.
Move the microphone up. You're going to have to really focus on that.
All right. Hi, there you go. So starting here with the Walker study, this is basically a study they did back in 2013. It shows that we have a supply adequacy deficit, and the interesting thing about this is that it still shows a deficit even though we have a surplus in the loading and short-term spots. This study was done the week after 4th of July, so not necessarily the peak, but still, a summer weekend, and then also Thursday. So that's pretty much what this slide is stating. Back then we had a deficit. If you apply growth to that number, the deficit's probably much larger than that. This is trying to quantify the value of a spot. So basically I just took the sales tax, backed into the revenue for the businesses, and then divided it by the visitors, the amount of cars, and got a rough idea per spot. So I think this aligns with other figures that have maybe been mentioned in the past of roughly $100,000 per spot per year. So just as we go forward, I thought this would be a good number to have in the back of our minds. This is pretty much if we applied that spot math to the AB 413 implementation. So roughly we lost about 45 spots from my understanding. If we apply that to the $100,000 per spot, you're $4.5 million of business revenue. You apply that to the tax and everything else, you come to, a substantial number that affects everybody. This is not only just a financial impact, it's also impacting public safety, CO2 emissions. The worse we make this problem, the worse those things become. And then really down the road, if this continues to progress and we don't do anything through the summer and you guys go full board with marketing, you're going to have a branding impact. I think you're already starting to see that. And if you go through the summer without doing anything, I think you're going to start to see that racking up. I believe 10% for an impact is moderate to what you're hearing at the grocery stores, the restaurants, the places around when you see it firsthand. So what can we do about AB 413? This is essentially the carve out that's in the language. It allows a city to, establish a new distance of red based on an ordinance that's justified by established traffic safety standards. So trying to utilize this avenue to do what we can to eliminate the need for as much red maybe going down to a portion we think is appropriate for this city. One of the ways to do that is to reduce the speed limit that we can do for the traffic safety, improvements. Reducing the speed limit from 25 to 15 helps dramatically, so this chart basically shows that you'll improve the safety by 1.5 times or reduce the fatality risk by 1.5 times if we can lower that speed limit. So really putting effort into that, I think, helps us move past this AB 413, whereas, this implementation is probably more causing a problem than helping our safety at the moment. More language to basically, solidify the implementation of a speed limit reduction. It says it may be the most consequential intervention in reducing pedestrian injury and fatality. So just more evidence there. How do you reduce the speed limit? This is a study that we did on Mother's Day, right around Mother's Day. Basically, you have to come up with the 85th percentile, and where that lands is where you can lower to within rounding. This showed that we could lower the speed limit down to 15 miles an hour if we wanted to, right on Ocean there in between San Carlos and Dolores. There's other ways that we can look to reduce the speed limit. So these are 2 bills that are in motion. I think one's done, one's in motion, but allows different aspects for business districts themselves to maybe reduce speed limits without having to do studies. Overall, safety for Carmel hasn't been a problem in general, from what I understand. This is a statistic I pulled that showed we pretty much have 0 pedestrian fatalities. So I don't think this bill was meant for this city. It seems like it was meant for much larger cities with much more fatalities. So to summarize the AB 413 path, history, precedent, we don't have a problem. The carve-out language says we can do, things within reason. And then here's the measures we're looking at taking. I mentioned the speed limit reduction, shortening the red zones. Also that's been mentioned is potentially adding more 4-way stops in the business district, potentially adding crosswalks in the business district, improving the signage on the crosswalks that are, or the stops that are not 4-way, I think is a good point. And then, ultimately, if we continue down this path, we'll probably have somewhat of a parking management program, which should help the traffic safety by reducing the traffic congestion. So on to the next point that we're going to kind of emphasize, trying to optimize the spaces on the street. These are some of the things that we're looking at. So length of spaces, regardless of color, adding compact spaces, adding smaller parking where it permits, like a golf cart or scooter type parking space, changing the timing on spaces. So looking at those short-term time parking spaces and potentially moving those to longer term so that visitors could park there and feel comfortable and not rush out of shops when they're shopping. That is a trade-off. We have to look at that against the resident aspect of using those spaces for, local facilities. And then also the location of spaces. So maybe putting like the loading space on the end of corners, stuff like that, to try to reduce the amount of space that it would take for a big car to fit in there, since they won't have to parallel park. These are tools we're looking to utilize to optimize on-street parking. So just something we can plug variables into, see the impact it would have on the street spaces that we actually have out there. So this is one of the tools we're developing, if needed. This is kind of an impact projection on each one of those variables and how much they impact. The red space reduction's probably the best, and then obviously changing all the white reduction, sizing down would be a big impact. But this kind of quantifies, a rough idea of what impact we can plan on seeing if we adjusted those. And this is the total opportunity on street. So we're assuming with reducing the red, changing the sizing, adding compacts, we'll get 50, 60, 70 spots depending on how aggressive we go. And then also taking a look at the short-term green spaces and the loading spaces to see if we move those to more white spaces to allow them to be visitor parking instead of just utilized by the residents. And then,
Stephen, are you online? Do you see him? Steve Summers? Okay. Stephen, why don't you give a little intro to yourself? Oh, what happened?
Yeah, this is Steve. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can.
All right, great. My name's Steve Summers, and I'm the owner of National Parking and Valet. And we've been a partner with the City of Carmel for over 20 years now. We've been with you guys when the Sunset Center used to be a paid parking lot. then when the Walker study came in, they decided that they should turn it into a free lot. And then you guys implemented parking machines. We became your vendor to manage the parking machines and to provide the concierge service for when guests came up to the machines and help out with that. We also manage your tour bus machines, and throughout the years we've participated in most of your major special events down Ocean Avenue. When it comes to, for example, Doug Friedman's event when he was running his car show, I've been with Doug since the very beginning of time. So we have a long tradition of working with the city. Carmel is, appreciate you guys reaching out to me to talk about some of your parking issues. I truly believe that if we could create a valet zone at the corner of Unipero and Ocean right there, we could remove 70 to 100 cars off the street immediately. And that's very important for the city because it reduces the congestion, reduces the frustration of your visitors coming into your town. And we've isolated anywhere from 70 to 100 spots that are just on that periphery, the outside area of the downtown that are owned by city land for the most part. Some creative spots that we've come up with are over at the Public Works, for example. There's approximately 25 spots that are available. We've talked about the Forest Theater, which we think we can get over 30 parking spots when some work is done over there. Outset Center ramp, we can create another 16 spots. And so we have different places in the community where we believe we created another 70 to 100 parking spots for you guys. And it'd be very beneficial for your town.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you do that?
So we would set up at the tour bus zone there. There's a loading zone at the front entrance. We would have a valet sign to indicate that valet parking is available. Cars would pull up to that area. We can stage up to 16 cars in that area at a time. From there, we'd have approximately 4 guys working at a time. One guy is a supervisor that's always on site with a locking key box. One guy is our shuttle driver on the golf cart to move our guys back and forth, and we'll have 2 other drivers that are moving cars to the different off-site locations. When a guest comes up to the location, we introduce ourselves, explain our program. The program is they get charged by the hour for the service, and we provide them with a card so when upon coming back to their car, they can text us their valet ticket number. We'll have a designated phone number just for that location. That allows us to pull their car up quicker and get them in and out of the town so that they're happy. And we charge them via credit card on our Square reader right on site. And we'll be keeping detailed records of that for the city. And that's how our program would work.
All right. Go ahead. All right, so I guess I'll cover this. So as most of you know, as a Carmel Cares volunteer, I've been working at Forest Theater for 5 years. I do most of the maintenance between me and a couple volunteers. And I've had my eye on the parking lot there for the last 5 years because it's not good. And the long-term project is probably $1 million project to make a real parking lot out of it, level it, and so on, retaining walls. But in the meantime, there's some boggy areas there that we hoped we could use a couple years ago, but it's just too wet. There's underground water like there is in most of the city, and it just makes it muddy and a mess. So we've taken a look at it engineering-wise, and with a very simple project, we could keep that water, disperse it to places where it's okay to have water, and using gravel, we could make at least 30 more spaces in there. There's also, we have to remove some trees. I've taken some people who are involved with trees in town, and they think that it's a good idea. We could replace trees in the right place and good trees. But it's a lot of spaces, and it's not just for the valet project, it's for the shows that happen there, because we've been doing a lot of research on that during shows. It's not safe. Linda Califuris can vouch for that. She's walked the neighborhood with me. And it's not only the theater, it's the city has right-of-ways around the theater that could be developed a little bit to make them clearer and make them safer. There's also encroachments in that neighborhood that need to be removed so that we can get emergency vehicles through there and show. So this just isn't about the parking and the valet, it's about public safety. And so, but we can do it all at the same time for a very low amount of money. So that's pretty exciting, and I think I've got all that covered. And I have spoken with some of the neighbors. The neighbors are pretty much in favor of this to make improvements around Forest Theater as well. But conversations with Stephen Moore, who has the lease for the theater, he's excited about this, obviously, because it makes his shows a lot more easier to access. And but we have some further discussions. Nothing's taken place. This is all just proposals at this point that we could investigate. All right, I think there's another interesting idea, and I have spoken with Javier about this, because we have on our agenda to spend, or in our budget, to spend $450,000 to straighten out a wall, and you know that I've been commenting about that extensively. Stephen took a walk with me to look at the theater, not only for the paving $300,000 expense, but also for the $450,000. And he came up with the idea that we don't even need the path next to that wall. If we excavated that fairly simple project, we could generate, it's probably more like 10 to 12 spots. There's also a CERT container in the corner there that's empty and is still sitting in the parking lot. We can sell that, CERT can sell that and get rid of it, and that frees up all that space. It's also an area where we're about to put some more electric charging stations, because PG&E has a pole across the street and they're willing to pay for some of that. So we could have a really wonderful electric charging stations with lots of parking spaces, but that's a lot of parking spaces for probably less than the price that we were willing to spend to straighten a wall. So I think that's a pretty good thing we could look at. And I've asked Javier to give a very high level estimate of that. And that's pretty much the only time I've talked to staff about any of the things that are in this proposal. We've done this all on our own. The sidewalk on the other side of that wall is probably the worst sidewalk in the whole city. And that's where all the people pretty much from the parking lot are walking. So, I mean, that's something, we need to take those 2 trees out. It's a whole nother subject, but you know, that can be fixed fairly quickly. Next slide. One of the really big reasons why I was interested in the valet service when I met Stephen is there are, as you saw in that last chart, there are what, 1,700 parking spots off street in town?
Yeah.
And some of them are probably half of them are pretty close in town. And we just can't use them. For instance, I was talking to Greg Profeta at the pancake breakfast the other day, and I said, I haven't thought of this, but you guys have a parking lot there where you could get 16 cars in it, and nobody's in it. It's not used for anything. Would you be willing to do that? And he says, yeah. I mean, that's the only time I've ever spoken to somebody about it. And he said, yes. And you know, you develop the business model over time. How do you share revenue? Does he get $5 a car every time you park there? It doesn't really matter. That will work itself out as we start experimenting with this, but it opens up a lot of options, even on the east side of Junipero, which is where we're looking right now, because we don't want to be driving downtown with the valet service unless the restaurants are involved. Later on, the valet service, as Stephen's already been doing, I didn't know this, but he's been doing this all along. Restaurants can become part of the program where they maybe have a spot in front for their good customers, and they pull it, we go get the car, and we, you know, that whole thing. So it could be expanded. In some restaurants, without prompting, have told me they would be willing to pay the city for managing that process. That's it for that. Stephen, you want to talk about the Del Mar Beach idea that you came up with?
Del Mar Beach part?
Yes.
So if you guys are interested in having that turned into a paid parking, you need to treat that initially as a staff of a person down there and to collect a daily fee to park. Person would be staged over at Scenic, right there in the island. You have approximately 60 spots or so from Scenic down. Just north of that, up to San Antonio there's about another 18 to 20 or so spots. It could be a mixture of, allowing your locals to park for free, but it's a way to generate revenue for your city, for the tourists that come into town. So if that's something you're interested in, we're happy to help you guys out.
How long would it take you to set that up?
How would we set that up?
How long?
Oh, we could set that up next weekend.
Okay, thanks. Next slide. Okay, you're back to Andrew.
So, in looking at what we're looking at, obviously we're coming into the summer, and that's really the critical moment for, putting anything in place we can that's cheap and effective and affordable right now. But long term, I think you have a bigger problem. If you are going to scale any more or plan on any more growth, you guys have to have a bona fide solution. And I think the employees are the problem. I don't know how many would think there's 60-something restaurants. Add up the city, the construction, what's the number, 500, 700? I mean, and when they're in this little area from 5th to 8th, Unipro to Monteverde, on street, I'm getting like 880 spots. So, I mean, if there are 500 spots, something like that, I mean, yes, most of them are trying to park elsewhere. There's been requests from businesses to move them off site, but ultimately they are the biggest offenders, and they stay there all day. And not only is it a problem for the general idea of parking, but it also causes an issue with the businesses. Employees are leaving work when they shouldn't. They're moving their car when they're on the clock. This all poses more problems for the businesses themselves. So trying to get to a solution there, I think, is the ultimate goal. How do we do that? I think we, request, then we incentivize, and then we enforce. I think the request should have been made already. I don't know how you guys feel, but when I started helping out Kenny, I know he told me, hey, you go here, you go to Vista Lobos, or, go here, go there. So I hope that most businesses are requesting their employees to do that. If they're not, maybe that's something we could start doing. The incentive one I see is a carpool program. Enterprise offers a commute program that seems very interesting. I think it's inexpensive. I'm waiting on a call back from them, but it sounds like it's pretty inexpensive. They basically tie riders and drivers together in a van and pull them in. I'm thinking that would be ideal. Maybe we could have hubs in the locations where we have a lot of employees. So incentivize that by allowing them to reduce their costs on traveling. But we could also, back to that real quick, instead of having them try to find parking, allowing them to drop at the valet or something like that to where we can make it even easier for them, I think incentivizes that option. Long-term having off-site, parking for the employees, I think is incentive number 2. So any way to acquire and then incentivize them to go off-site, I think is advantageous. Providing little food, drinks, stuff like that, I think is options. Funding from machines and local ads, I think could be happening, very easily. And then, somehow making sure there's always support for them, I think is another key point. Not, there'll be a shuttle running, but is it a half hour or whatever? Those the details need to be discussed and figured out. And then, but ultimately, I think this is a good solution. And then enforcement, I think, is the big, the big fun topic. So, how do you get the employees out of the business district? And the surrounding areas, we don't want to push them to the surrounding residential areas either. I think that's what paid parking did to some extent. So, I think you could come with a fairly inexpensive system if you wanted to do this, something like this. Somebody records license plates, they identify the common plates, you issue a trial citation, there's a rebuttal system, hey, this is a resident, here's my address, or, this is a visitor, that just happened to be very frequently visiting, But if you don't get any rebuttal, you start to develop 2 lists, one allowed list, one zero tolerance list, and then you just ticket anybody that's on the zero tolerance list immediately. And that doesn't have to be an everyday constant monitoring system. You could just do a spot check twice a week or something. Increase the harshness of the fines on the repeat offenders, and I think you would get pretty much everybody out of there. Long term, if you tied, cameras on taxis and had a toll ticket processing, system, you could probably automate the enforcement, but do you really need to go there? That's discussion possible. Other solutions?
Yeah, down the road, and I know we've discussed this a little bit. In certain parts of town, paid parking might make sense. It's obviously a big discussion in this town. I watched paid parking fail terribly in Paso over the last 5-6 years. But there might be some areas where using T2, and apparently we have the whole connection set up with them, and it could happen quickly. National Valley was a partner in that the last time. Our enforcement is interesting right now. I don't really understand exactly what's happening, and it's probably not a subject for this meeting, but we could outsource perhaps our enforcement to make it better. That's always an option, perhaps. I don't understand it. But we could also, the other thing that's really causing problems in town, and you can see the picture on the left, that's down by my house. There's a lot of construction in town, and the roads become impassable, and we need to do something about that. It's not going to get any better with more water being available and more ADUs and more, we're advertising ADUs, do it, and all of those are projects. And there could be 50 more construction projects in a very short time. So I think as a city, as a council, we need to really be looking at that, because it just is debilitating for most neighborhoods. Next. All right, so I'm going to end up where I started out, that there are a number of things we can do. Some of them are really inexpensive. Some of them need more work, and opinions from our city attorney, perhaps like AB 413. But I personally believe that every single thing on here could be done, and I think we have a lot of people in this community that are willing to dig in and help. Like Andrew's an example, where working as a volunteer, he's put together this presentation. I know the chambers here, I know that they've been having lots of meetings. They've been talking about shuttles and trolleys, which we didn't even get into much, but I think what needs to be done is something versus making it worse, and prioritizing some of the things that can have the biggest impact and determining the best way forward with each of those. Some will require staff time, some won't take much, some might take public works, putting new stripes down or repainting the curbs different colors. But I can't find a parking place sometimes downtown. Our policemen can't find a place to park to get coffee. And we know every single square inch of this town. And when it gets to that point, I think it's time we start doing something. And I apologize for the bad process, but it's gotten to a point where we need to stop talking and start doing something. And I'm proud of Andrew and Kenny for putting the time into getting us to this point. And I'm going to finish our presentation now and open it up for questions from the council and then from the public, and then we'll talk about it and see where we might want to go. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it. That's okay. That's okay. All right. I'm going to bring it. We have some more slides, but I think you got the point of what's going on here. All right. Any questions from the council?
I've got a question for Chief Tomasi. When we passed AB 413, I remember one thing that we were concerned about the previous council was we wanted you to come back to us and give us a report, how it's working, things that could be improved, things that could be changed. Do you have any timeline about when you might be able to give us an update on that?
I mean, within the next couple of months, I can give you a pretty good overview of how it's working and what's going on.
Okay, because I'm also concerned about things such as speed limits. Like, these are things that a police department and a police chief needs to decide, not citizens, however well-meaning we are. Things like that, also including the length for parking spaces. What would you be able to present to us realistically, and what sort of time frame regarding those three items?
Yeah, I definitely have some comments on all three of those, but I think it'd be better to work collectively to come up with a presentation back. Like, maybe if we work together on this to move it forward. Happy to discuss speed limits, how we can implement them, if we can, if we can't. Give you an update on AB 413, a little bit of statistics, I guess, we have, and then maybe even my opinion would be good. Mm-hmm. And also the third one you said was?
The parking space length. changing lengths of
Yeah,
parking
happy to
spaces.
talk about that. What we need to do, what we should do, and why we have some of the space sizes we have, and how
Right.
we've come across that. A good person to have in on that would be Rob Culver in Public Works. I know I've worked with him for the last 15 years on this with the Traffic Safety Committee, but he's been painting them for close to 30. So he has a really good history on that, and I think he'd be a good person to include in any type of meeting we have.
Yes, because we want your expertise, we want his expertise, and you're the person that knows this kind of stuff that needs to let us know, what you found and what you think. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Chief, I have a question.
Yes, Mayor.
Do you think there's a problem?
There's been a problem of parking in the cities or the village since about 1938. I think that was the first article, if I recall, that's in the Pine Cone about it. I might be off by a decade or two, but it might have been earlier, might be later. We've been talking about parking for a long time. I have an entire file cabinet full of past attempts to resolve it, articles, staff reports, Traffic Safety Committee meeting minutes. Not minutes, topics, and things like that we talked about. We have a problem in this village with parking, yes.
So do you think some of the ideas that you saw tonight are practical and could be implemented in a reasonably short time frame?
I definitely applaud the effort that went into this. I think there's some really good ideas, new ideas, and I think things that we could, if you implemented them, they could go in pretty quick. But I think we would want to do some public outreach like we've done in previous years, and a lot of community meetings on this like we've done on other attempts, just to inform the public of what we want to do as much as possible.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, good.
Thank you.
All right, since there are no questions from the council, anybody have a comment from the public? Anybody that's here that'd like to say something? Line up. How many people want to say something? All right, so we have like 10 or 12.
Just go ahead and make a line at the podium, please.
As with anything, if you agree with someone, it's okay to say, I agree with them, and with any enhancement, rather than repeating over and over. All right, hi.
Obviously, we have
Welcome.
a problem. We will always have a problem. You're never going to solve. You're never going to have enough parking spaces in Carmel. We are known internationally, and yet we still are marketing the hell out of our little town. Don't you think that's rather contradictory? We don't need more parking, we need fewer cars and people, and yet we keep asking for more and more and more. I don't know if that's business-based, because you just want the money, or what, but this is also a place that people live. And we're focusing all of our attention on bringing more tourists in. And there's got to be a better balance. I know what all the problems are, and they're very tough to solve. I'm very aware of that. But I hope you're looking at it from a little different perspective than just parking. But what do we do? Because we can't stop the people coming.
Thank you. It's a balancing act for sure.
Joe DiNucci, resident. I applaud the ingenuity and the resourcefulness to tackle this perennial problem. I don't know what the balance is between residents and businesses. Let's just say it's a fungible thing. I do strongly recommend we start with AB 413 remediation. I think that would be a visible thing. It doesn't cost a lot of money. It takes some chutzpah to do it. But I know when I drive around and I see yellow and red, and I don't know what they mean, and it does seem like we've squandered a lot of real estate. So I think those steps alone, because they're doable, they're not expensive, they don't involve any technology. I'm not sure what the legal implications are. That's why you're here. But I strongly hope you can act on that quickly.
Thanks for coming tonight, Joe.
Good evening. Scott French. I live on Torres between Mountain View and 8th. And I do want to applaud you for trying to take a holistic approach and bringing as many ideas as possible, because it won't be one single idea that solves the issue. And thank you all for your service to the city. I did want to comment as one of the newer residents. I think unless my wife is in the car with me, I face one of the most dangerous intersections just trying to get over to Ocean and out of the city. And that's where you cross over Mountain View and then head over to Ocean to leave the city. I think regardless of parking, and I think even if we are able to add the spots at the Forest Theater, which sounds like a great idea, and I think in the presentation we talked about adding more four-way stops. I think all along Mountain View, all of those intersections should be four-way spots, because I can't see into the intersection until I'm actually into the intersection, and there have been quite a few close calls there.
Thanks. Yeah, if you aren't aware, we have a traffic safety committee that meets once a quarter, and we just had one last Wednesday. They're very interesting meetings. They're more casual than this setting, and we talked a lot about four-way stops last Wednesday.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thanks.
Hi. I'm Katie Ania. If you don't know you, I'm with the Chamber of Commerce. I just wanted to say thank you for putting together this presentation. The year that I've spent at the Chamber, we have recognized that parking is a challenge for our businesses, our residents, our community. And so I just wanted to make a note to all of you to let you know that we are committed to partnering with you, working with you to find ways to alleviate some of these challenges, whether that be through off-site employee parking that the Chamber can help host, trolleys and transportation. Something else that we've begun to explore too is the concept of a business improvement district, and so whether that's something that we start to talk to you about structuring a way for businesses and residential communities to work together. We're not trying to replace anyone or duplicate any work, and we want to be mindful of those visitors that are coming to our village. Finally, I just would like to respectfully propose perhaps a working group of business leaders, residents, community partners who could come together and explore practical options like Andrew put together for us today, and just that the Chamber would be honored to participate, play a major role, take the lead, whatever it is that you need from us to get the ball rolling. So thank you for your commitment to this, and thank you for being such a great partner with us.
Thanks, Katie.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Kevin Roos. I encourage the council to do what it can to deal with our obvious and worsening parking problem. We're seeing employees park north of 2nd. I mean, I know this is a huge problem when you're closer to Ocean, but it's happening everywhere. Tourist business owners and employees are important to city revenue and have parking needs that should be met, and I've seen some good ideas here. However, I urge the council to honor the needs of residents with some modification of the current city resident parking permit program. Let me be clear about who these residents are. People who live in Carmel and are tax residents of California with their voting addresses in Carmel and whose cars are registered in California. If you leave those things out, there are a lot of people, who I've seen stickers on cars that are not registered in California. What's up with that? Anyway, no one else is a resident for purposes of resident parking permits. Any city approach to parking needs to recognize that residents are the most important constituency. We're the ones who vote you into office. I'm happy to, I think it'd be great idea to charge for parking, except for resident permits. In the business area, residents are subject to time limits. This is the way it's done now with the parking permit program. There's a little more lenience on the parking limits, although that's been necked down in the time that I've been here. Anyway, I applaud that you're taking this on. I think it's about time, and I've seen a lot of great ideas, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's Randall Burnett. I made a brief presentation last week, and I'd just like to add this. As a business owner in Carmel since 1989, owner of Katie's Place Restaurant on Mission between 5th and 6th, we've seen a lot of changes in that time. But I want you to know that there is something that business owners can do right here, right now. We don't have to wait for studies. We don't have to wait for you guys to evaluate all of your alternatives. It's something we've been doing. I have 12 employees. None of them are allowed to park in the business district. All of them are mandated to park on Upper Junipero and beyond. And if we know of their cars, if we catch them parking in the business district, they get a warning. This is a part of our employee requirement. That is, 12 people are off the streets, so we do our part, and we enforce it. So we, in effect, we're our own police force to make this work. There are no complaints. We have one employee now that's Ubering in, but the rest of them own their own cars. And they don't mind walking a couple of blocks to get to work. And I think, you know, the rest of the town could take our example to heart and do something with their employees. And that would open up a lot of spaces. That's it.
Thank you, Randall.
And thank you for your service.
Thank you, Randall.
Maria Roos. First of all, applaud this. I love the idea of having had a little more time to digest it, but this is very good starting point. The one thing, a couple of things. One is it will be great if we can separate what we used to call in corporate America the low-hanging fruit, the easy to implement, which are the ones that will be quicker, easier solutions, and which are the longer term, the ones that will take funding, more work, or even a discussion group, because there may be a few that we can start with that will be easy to implement. From that standpoint, I also think that the four-way stops, and I wish I had known about the traffic meeting last week, because that seems to solve a lot of problems, because we always question which street you're on, and people are, tourists especially, looking at phones. They don't know. If we had them all four-way stops, it will make it a lot easier. And the one element, and I love the comment I heard before, I was a bit concerned about penalizing employees and coming too hard on them. I mean, come on, they're coming and working in our city. They're commuting to our city. There are a lot of them. If we can facilitate it, but not discourage them from coming to work here, I think that should be considered as a balance, because right now it's like being like full enforcement of how to penalize them. It seems a little bit of more tolerance for us residents, yes, but at the end of the day, the employee piece is a lot of a key balance. So those would be my comments, but great work, and I hope we continue to talk about it, or go ahead and implement the low-hanging fruit.
Yes, thank you.
I didn't know if I could just show one slide or just throw it up there. It was at the very end of the deal. But the residents piece, there's a program called Go-Go Grandparent. I feel like the city maybe could implement something similar where, you know, you give credits for a little golf cart taxi ride down to the mailbox, down to the drugstore, could even pick up the items for them, could translate into multiple ranges of services like Go-Go Grandparent did. But just so there is something for the residents, I think there is potential solutions there as well.
Yeah, there's lots of options with shuttles. It's going to be interesting to have a workshop on it. All right, I think we're done here in the chambers. Let's go out to the Zoom.
Cindy Lloyd, go ahead.
Oh.
Thank you very much. My name is Cindy Lloyd, for the record. As an employee at Community Hospital, we had shuttles parking off-site, and then we get shuttled into work, and that seemed to help. As you know, parking has been a problem ever since I was a kid, and that was a long time ago. I'm glad to see some serious looking at it. I had suggested over 30 years ago that a parking garage be built down where Cottages of Carmel currently is, and a constant shuttle going from there all the way through the barnyard, around the beach and up through town. But that didn't happen. And so here we are. I think that the one thing the chamber could do, since the chamber is the beneficiary, or at least the businesses are the beneficiary of the tourists coming to town, is doing exactly what Katie's Cottage is doing. And that is making sure their employees park outside of the commercial district. And so that's about all I can say for the moment. Thank you.
Ian Martin, go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Hang on. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ian Martin. I'm a resident and a former planning commissioner. Yeah, parking is a very serious matter, and as Chief Tomasi said, and I love that he's quoting the pine cone and as evidence that this has been a problem since at least 1938. I love that. But yeah, it's a very serious problem. I've got friends who live, in Monterey and Pacific Grove, and it's just like, yeah, we do not come to Carmel anymore to dine or to shop because it's just too darn hard to find a parking place. So I think it's a really good idea to be thinking outside the box and coming up with some new solutions for what to do. All that said, I think a few people in the audience or there in the chambers tonight spoke about residential impacts. And I think now's a great time to refer to Ordinance 96, which of course affirms that we are primarily a residential city that needs to prioritize residential needs. So I will not support turning the Forest Theater into a parking lot for downtown parking. Pushing out into the residential neighborhood to satisfy parking problems in the downtown is not a good idea. It goes against Ordinance 96. It goes against the needs of the residences, which are supposed to be the top priority of the village. So please, I will not support using Forest Theater to solve this problem. In lieu parking is a terrible idea now, and it's severely undervalued. The price for in lieu parking has not been adjusted in 22 years. It's currently at $54,000, but if you do the math specified in the municipal code, it should be more like towards $150,000, and even then it's still way undervalued. You take a typical 4,000 square foot lot, and you use the math specified in the municipal code, it would value that lot at $500,000. So even the $146,000 figure is way too underpriced. So in lieu parking needs to be severely revised or abandoned altogether because parking is just too scarce, and it's just too scarce to give it away at that discount price. So those are my comments, and thanks again for thinking about this tricky matter.
Thank you, Ian.
Nancy Toomey, go ahead.
Yes. Good evening. Nancy Toomey here, speaking on behalf of the Carmel Residents Association Board of Directors. We wanted to thank everybody, the work that's been done by this team for their constructive efforts, ideas, and presentation this evening. There's a lot of good work in there. As a safety note, the broader four-way stops implementation that was mentioned in the presentation and by some of the others applied in the core of downtown, not residential areas, was approved by the traffic committee this prior week, but requires future city council approval to implement. So at least there will be in the downtown in short order, we believe, that item addressed. So at least we're consistent in that downtown community. Officially, we do ask and also agree with the recommendation that parking is both a short-term and a longer-term strategic priority for our village, for our residents, for our businesses, and yes, for our visitors. We are experiencing and hearing of these challenges regularly from our constituents, neighbors, and beyond. We look forward to next steps, again, both long and short term, exploring these and other items not yet covered as in those that are represented here, by revisiting access to the existing funds in lieu of parking fees, and as Ian just mentioned, revisiting those fees for any new construction downtown, as Ian had mentioned, expanded enforcement, reinforced that it was also covered earlier, and possible ticket collection gaps in what is yet to come, because we have heard multiple stories where when tickets are issued, they're not actively collected in ways that could provide some added revenue. Thanks so much. Appreciate what you all do.
As always, thank you, Nancy.
Carrie Tice, go ahead. Carrie, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Carrie Tice.
We can hear you. We can hear you. You're here.
I'm sorry. It's really, with the Zoom, it's really hard to hear when you're on Zoom at the chambers.
We're gonna fix that shortly.
Oh, I hope so. I've been working on that one for a while too. Thank you for bringing this up, Mayor. Yes, we do have a parking problem, but we need both short and long time solutions, like Nancy said. I have a few questions. In terms of the concierge idea, you know, help us out with what are the profit sharing here with the city and the business? How are we going to get shuttles paid for in terms of employee parking, which is a great idea? We did try MST, and Jeff knows this. We did try trolleys about 15 years ago, and the riding sharing didn't hold up because there weren't enough people riding. We did a MST put in some money, the city put in some money to pay for the trolleys. So it has been done before, which brings me back to the issue of we need to hear what Mr. Euler, he spent a lot of time talking to the public, talking to businesses. I'd like to know what he found out. So please bring back this issue and do like you did with the addresses. Let's have a parking focused workshop so we can learn from what we've done, from the studies that have been done, and currently what was recently done with Mr. Euler. And then we can start picking off some of the low-hanging fruit that you suggested, Mayor, in terms of helping with the daylighting law, that maybe some of those parking spaces can be reclaimed. So I really would like this back on as a priority list for the City Council, but we need both a short-term and long-term plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
Chuck Najarian, go ahead. Chuck Najarian, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, this is Chuck Najarian, a Carmel resident. Thank you for addressing this evening. As I saw, what you did when I listened was you were talking about significant adverse impacts resulting from parking issues, and you discussed mitigation measures, particularly in the presentation. I just want to point out that this is, I think, one of the flaws in the decision-making process at the city is they haven't engaged the California Environmental Quality Act, and if they had, I know several of us have been pointing out that parking impacts, for example, from construction activities going on in town, particularly cumulative impacts where you have multiple projects under construction, could have been addressed under CEQA if the projects that you've permitted weren't exempted from it. And I'd like to talk a little about the housing element as well. I know you're amending that as we speak. I think it would be a good idea to catch up with the housing element. For example, I would recommend you look very strongly at the Surplus Land Act, which would have taken the parking lots off the table in the very beginning. And also look at actually doing a real analysis of of parking, which wasn't done in the last mitigated negative declaration, and also address the cumulative impacts there. So my point is that you could have had a series of decisions in which parking issues were addressed. And I think it's a missed opportunity, but it's an example of why some of us believe that finding excuses to not engage CEQA is detrimental to the city and to the residents. So I hope that there's a change of heart here. And again, I'm pleased that you're taking this parking issue seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
Okay. Stephen Moore, go ahead.
All right. Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, am I being, can you hear me all right today?
We can.
Hello?
I can hear you, Stephen.
Okay, you can, sorry.
Doesn't sound like Stephen, but I'm hearing a voice.
All right, sorry, it's a new laptop. And I'm first time Zooming, so I had to, never mind. Anyhow, a lot of people are making great comments. Carrie is absolutely right about needing a long-term as well as short-term solutions. I think going down the list, remediation is obviously a first choice and immediate, right away look at that. I agree with B, optimizing the on-street parking, sourcing and developing off-street parking. Surprisingly, I look at the Forest Theater parking lot and it's empty a lot of the time. And it could be a solution. And if more parking spaces were created there, if more parking spaces were created at the Forest, it helps the neighbors in terms of the shows that are there, and then those extra spaces are available during the daytime. And generally the street right along the Forest Theater is generally empty. People don't realize it, but they're available. People who come to shows know they're available, but they don't look like parking spaces right along Mountain View in front of the Forest Theater. So I think that's an opportunity. And I appreciate Dale having a let's think outside the box conversation. No commitments, no deals, not a lot of detail yet, but in concept, I think there's a lot there. And the sensitivity to that there's a school on the property, and there are times when there are kids around, and there are shows, obviously. So valet parking on a Sunday afternoon when we've got 500 people looking for parking, would be scheduling, a scheduling process. Everything can be scheduled. So I think it's an opportunity. I think manual paid parking around town. We've talked about it so many times. I think it would be a turnoff, quite frankly, for our visitors. I would rather keep those the way they are, timed, but not a fee. I think the long-term solution, nobody's brought it up yet today, but I'm sure it's on people's radar. It's been talked about since I was a kid, roaming around Carmel, and it's the Sunset Center lot. And why don't we build a multi-deck, dig down, do a multi-deck garage, have a deck for employees and have the other decks for paid parking, finance it with long-term revenue based on the income that's going to come in from paid parking from the garage. I think it's something that should be seriously on the drawing board for a long-term solution. And then on top you put a park or a museum or everything's been proposed over the last 40 years that I've been watching this.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Stephen. I'll see you soon up at the theater. Karen?
Good afternoon. I just drove practically 8 hours from Lake Arrowhead to here, and traffic was horrendous. We have a car problem, a truck problem, and a parking problem, and we have all of these in our quaint village. And I'll tell you, I've been to Europe many times, and we are looking less and less and less like a European village because we are inundated with huge cars. I think the in-lieu fees are ridiculous. They need to be raised, and we need to augment our in-lieu fund so that we can actually use it. I think we need way more parking enforcement. We've talked about how the U.S. Post Office lot gets parked full all the time, as does the Wells Fargo lot and other private lots, even though the public seems to be using them. I couldn't agree more with Carrie that Chief Euler, when he was here and afterwards, did a study, and we should have heard that, and we haven't. I don't like to see us blaming daylighting for everything. This is a town that, of all places, needs to keep our pedestrians safe. Cars are 22% larger, and they're parking in those 20-minute lots anyway. They're filling, the 20-minute places anyway. You know, one thing that you mentioned, maybe squeezing more in by moving the T-squares, but it was my understanding that for years those T-squares were measured precisely to save cars from opening their doors into trees. So I think you need to take that into consideration. We do have a lot of street trees, and if they're not lined up just right, you open your car door and you damage it with a tree. I also think we need to stop blaming our tourists, visit Carmel and see Monterey for all of this. They are doing exactly what they were hired to do, to bring people to Carmel. It is our fault as a city, as a council. When I was on it, I wanted to deal with paid parking, and our residents. We have to do something about managing the visitors once we get them here and making them want to come back. And they don't want to come back if they have to circle the block 10 times, nor do residents enjoy circling the block to get their mail. So I'm glad you are addressing it. I would like to see parking that happens in many, many other places. People expect to pay to park. I don't think that would be a big turnoff. We have tried time and time again to get business owners to have their employees park elsewhere. The employees seem to enjoy getting out every 2 hours and running around the block to move their cars, which creates even more chaos downtown. So until we solve the employee parking problem, I don't think we'll get very far, no matter what we do. But I appreciate you thinking about this. I am concerned if you had someone taking tickets, selling spots at the beach, that the backup might go up the street too far while that business was being done, when it's much easier to use a little computer program and pay through that way, that you find an open spot and you pay for it. You don't have to get in line to buy a ticket or anything.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate your comments. One more.
Scott Mace, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to echo the comments of the last speaker. I'm a big believer in the market, the free market, and the way we price parking. It has nothing to do with supply and demand. So let's consider pricing where appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, that was quick. All right, anybody else? Anybody else in the chambers after all that? No? Nobody else online?
Nope.
All right, so we're going to bring it back for some interesting comments, I'm sure. Let's start over here on the right.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Where to begin? This is an ongoing issue, as the chief and many others have said. We're a tourist town. Obviously, in the middle of summer, it's going to be harder to find a parking space downtown, and yet, go January down Ocean Avenue and a third of the spaces are open. So, we need to be realistic about this as well. And this has been an ongoing issue. I am concerned. I don't like the heightened sense of urgency, because somehow when we do things like that, we rush into some solutions that we then find were not good decisions. So I urge everyone to just, take a deep breath and find ways that we can make some smart decisions here. This has been something that's going on for 50 years. The Walker studies, we've had them in the 1970s. We had two more recently. So, this is something that's been an ongoing issue. I am concerned with things that will create problems and just push the issue into the residential areas, perhaps such as the Del Mar parking lot with the beach. That's something that very easily could end up just creating more of a traffic problem in residential areas. I think, as I mentioned in my question, we need to consult with Chief Tomasi on all of these issues. The AB4 13, for example, those yellow spaces I find downtown are very helpful. I mean, I find that people are using them to do a quick errand or, go to the post office and grab their mail real quick. So let's think before we start removing the yellow spaces. My big concern is the idea of shortening the parking spaces. I think for me, that's a non-starter. I've heard from people who are residents, I've heard from people who are business owners downtown, and they say it is an absolutely awful idea. If you think people are frustrated now, imagine them trying to get into an even smaller space. You're going to get people smashing into each other's cars. I was just talking to Chip this morning, and he said he got boxed in and he couldn't even get out of his parking space with our current spaces. As Karen even said, our cars are big. According to AI, an average car is 15.5 feet, an SUV is 17.5 feet, and a pickup truck is 19.8 feet. We've got people with pickup trucks downtown doing construction all the time. You've got vans delivering things. You just can't realistically start changing those spaces. So like I said, that one for me is a non-starter. I have some concerns about the options that were offered for the valet parking list. Some of these seem extremely unrealistic. The thought of parking cars at Carmel High School on a busy Saturday and getting stuck on Highway 1 waiting, to get to that car. I mean, nobody's going to want to wait 20, 30 minutes to get their car back from the valet. So some of these lots that are included, I feel are unrealistic. Adding the post office lot, we need that for postal customers. So I think it's too high a number. Some of these really would not work out. I went back and I read the most recent Walker report from 2013. Now what happened during that time period with the council is they decided to make the north lot of Sunset Center free. And the whole idea with that was to get the employees to park there. So I think some of the issue, once again, is this outreach issue. We need to reach out to business owners and have them encourage having their employees park there. I think we could do something with an employee parking sticker. For example, if you have an employee parking sticker on and you're found parking downtown, maybe you will get a warning or a very, very small fine. But perhaps if they keep doing that, then they'll get the message that that's something that we can't do. And we can also combine that with urging them to park at the north lot. I think an idea of a shuttle system for employees and getting what Katie and Nia offered is a working group with citizens, residents, and the Chamber of Commerce to figure out what sort of a location we can get where we can have employees park their cars and then run a shuttle system. I don't know how we're going to pay for that, but that to me seems like a realistic way of solving some of these issues, especially with the employee parking. But also in talking about that, for example, with the sticker, we need more parking enforcement or somebody who's going to go out there and check those cars. So this is, once again, Chief Tomasi, another thing that, is going to sort of fall on your shoulders. I'm just concerned, I'd say, overall, in let's not rush and panic. Let's be smart about this. As others have said, there's maybe low-hanging fruit that we can do easily, quickly, cheaply, but let's not start doing major things until we certainly discuss this more as a community. I like this idea of a working group and finding out things that would work, and keeping in mind what Ian and others have said is this is a residential community, and let's not just push this problem into the residential areas. So I think that's it.
Okay, you're next, Bob.
I don't have a lot to say right now, honestly, and others probably do, so I'll try to be brief. Thank you for pulling this together. It's a problem. We all know it's a problem. Prioritization is what's necessary of your list. The daylighting, addressing the daylighting does seem like it's first. Understanding valet would be low fruit to me. I have concerns about, having participated in valet parking in other places, over a lifetime, it can be kind of crazy, and because you got 4 or 5, 6, 21-year-old valet drivers taking strangers' cars and parking them in multiple places, and they are running, and they're motivated to be fast, and so. I worry about the unintended consequences of everything when it comes to parking, because parking is a game of whack-a-mole. Unless we can, as the woman in the visor said, essentially, unless we can lower the arrival rate of vehicles, I think we're just pushing them around. And at some point, we do push them more and more and more into the residential areas, and that's already happening. I think if the arrival rate is increasing and our supply of our capacity is decreasing, I mean, I used to set up call centers. That's how you get wait times of 2 hours on a call center, because it just explodes on you, and that's what's happening here. I think it has to start with the employees. And Katie and Nia, thank you. You offered, I will say please, that I think the business community, and Kenny has already stepped up on this, but I think the business community can do a lot more. I, for one, would rather have our employees parking on my street in the residential community, in the residential neighborhood, than the tourists, because I think our employees can, if they don't already know how to park on our streets, they can be taught, right? And because otherwise what happens, I know on my street, and Jeff, you as well probably, is when the tourists show up, they don't know how to park. They think it's okay to leave 3 feet between the side of their car and the public right-of-way, and you can barely get a vehicle down the street. So I don't want to get sucked into the whack-a-mole here, but I think this has to start with employees, and we have to create a culture in our employees of understanding the importance of having more parking that they are currently using. And shuttles can work. Oh, and one other thing to consider, Jeff knows this, I now sit on the MST board replacing Jeff. MST does run a shuttle program, an employee shuttle program, where basically they'll provide the shuttle, and as long as you can provide the driver, and I think as long as you can get 3 or 4 people in the shuttle, and it's a van, so it's it can handle 10 or 12 people. You don't have to run it full, but they'll just give you the van and let you do it. So something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Hans?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for putting this together. I think it's actually really helpful. It's something that everybody can react to. I do think that parking is a problem. I live on 11th on a corner lot, and on a weekend, my house is wrapped with cars, probably 6, 7. At the same time, there are residential impacts, and I think that's why it's so helpful to bring the community in on this, because you start to hear some of those things. At first glance, the Forest Theater, I was like, oh, that's a great idea, and then it is a good point, right? It sort of adds a lot of vehicle traffic in a place that typically doesn't have it. So it's interesting to think about those things. For example, like the Sunset Center, the South Lot's also an interesting one. It's also like where my kids go and bike, and so if I'm trying to bike down Mission with my kids and we're gonna have a bunch of cars coming through the neighborhood that weren't there before, those are the kind of things that we need to sort of pressure test. I also think we want to sort of avoid, I think most of these solutions avoid this, but we want to avoid, I think, like the Disneyfication of what's supposed to be kind of a quaint, little village. Some of the ideas that I like, I think the valet parking is really interesting. I hadn't thought about that, and I think it's kind of genius. Now, it could go off the rails, but one of the things I like about it is, in tech, they talk about minimally viable products. This is that, right? I mean, you could potentially, get to 70, 100 spots like they talked about. You can do it at no cost to the city, and you could do it tomorrow, and we could just go try it and just see what it's like for 3 months, right? And if we don't like it, put it in the contract that we can pull the plug on it, right? I think that's interesting. There's no kiosk, like it's right there. This plan to have it right there at Unipero and Ocean, right in front of the Carmel Plaza, I think is actually really interesting. You can fit 2 lanes there, and like they said, you could potentially have up to 16 cars, so you could handle some of the flow issues. I think that's really interesting. Again, the 21-year-olds in cars speeding around, we'll have to see how that goes, but hopefully they're pretty identifiable in like a red jacket, so we know who to call. I do think the number one way to get at this issue is employee parking, right? I mean, just the numbers bear this out. If we think 250, 300, 350 of 850 spots are being taken up by employees on a day-to-day basis, like that is the problem, right? And so I think that that's something that we should really focus on. It totally cannibalizes spots that could be taken up by folks who are going to pay sales tax, which is obviously one of the three legs of our revenue stool as a city. I think the devil's kind of in the details of how you do it, but one of the ideas, that I had been kicking around was having kind of like a high capacity golf cart, maybe one of those that can hold like 8 people. And the key is you need to have it going frequently enough that people will actually use it. Like if I'm waiting 7 minutes, it's a whole lot different from waiting 25 or 30 minutes, right? And so I think that could really work. I don't like the idea of like cameras to catch employees. I think it's enough to go and work with our business owners and say, hey, if your employees are leaving every 2 hours, like work with us on that, like make that, like push them to use this system that we set up. And I think it could be, really fantastic. I'm like, some of the things I'm a little bit less sold on. I would certainly want the chief to weigh in on the restriping and the cars. Like I would want to know more about that. I could see, some potential for issues, maybe some modest changes there. If the paid parking at Del Mar, I really don't know where I am on that, but at a minimum, if we did it, I don't know that I would want to share that revenue with somebody. I think I would want more of that revenue for us. And one thing that I do think had been kicked around in the sort of I don't love idea is kind of a shuttle, like for example, like to Monterey. I like the idea of a shuttle for employee parking, but I worry a little bit that like the shuttle from Monterey thing gets too much into the Disneyfication of Carmel and starts to maybe run afoul of the Ordinance 96 thing. And I think we can get to the same place without that. Like if we can free up 200, 300 parking spaces with the employee parking thing, I think we get there without the negative character impacts, as long as we pick the right places to put the cars. So to sort of conclude, I think that this is something that we should prioritize. I do think in the spirit of like constrained prioritization, we should probably be disciplined about like removing something else from the priority list if we add this. I do want to bring in the community more. So I think Katie and Nia's proposal for a working group with residents and business owners is a fantastic idea and really the way to go about this. So we surface some of these great ideas because people in this community really do point out, as we saw tonight, some great ideas and points about these issues. And at the same time, like I really think that, there is the low-hanging fruit, like Maria said, sort of like the 80-20 rule. Like, why not just go for it and try the valet parking thing for a little bit and just kind of see, what the impact is. It's sort of a no cost to us. The employee parking, obviously we might need like a golf cart or whatever, but they are still, I put those in the low-hanging fruit category. And I would be really interested to just kind of try those things. And, we'd be able to see, we wouldn't be guessing anymore. And people could tell us, hey, these are the things I don't like. They're fixable or they're not fixable. Get rid of it and move on. So.
Got all that? Got it. Making sure he's there. Okay, one more, plus me.
Plus you. Thank you for putting this together. It's great to have a real discussion about parking. One of the things, before I start all my comments, one of the things that strikes me listening to this is, my question is it a parking problem or is it a congestion problem? And, to the first speaker, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, said, I think, summarized it for me, we don't need more parking, we need fewer cars. And I think that, and I'll come back to the sort of the employee parking in a minute, but I think that that's right. I think that parking is the parking sort of congestion problem is a supply-driven problem, and if we increase the number of parking spots, we will increase the demand for parking. And so I do not, I heard, who was it that, Stephen Moore talked about the Sunset Center parking lot, but that parking lot's already full, and digging another level or another 2 levels, spending $10 or $20 million to build a parking lot to accommodate 100 more cars, that just doesn't seem like 100 more cars in the worst case. 100 cars, so that parking lot will be empty a lot of the time, except on Saturdays during the summer, or now every day during the summer, or whatever it is. That just doesn't seem like a good use of like our money in our brain. Alessandra talked about AB 413, and I agree with her. AB 413, when I hear conversations about, when I hear people talk about AB 413, it's always about parking. Like we always hear, AB 413 always comes up in the context of parking, and you never hear AB 413 come up in the context of pedestrians. Like AB 413 is a pedestrian solution, not a parking solution. And I think that, when Alessandra made it clear that when Alessandra said that she finds them helpful, I think that during the times when I'm in downtown and congestion is a mess, this space allows me to see in the intersection and not get run over. Like that's important to me. It's important to me to not get run over, and so I'm of a real mixed bag on the AB 413, the AB 413 stuff. I like the initiative, Mr. Burnett and Katie's. I like the initiative that Mr. Burnett has taken to solve, just to address the problem. But on the other hand, I really do like the initiative, but on the other hand, a number of people have remarked on these solutions. They just push the parking problem out into the residential area, and I don't want that. Like I'm not interested in, and this goes back to fewer cars, like I'm not interested in having more cars parked in the residential area. And my actual issue, my desire about that or whatever it is I don't really have, and people that have talked to me know I'm kind of militaristic about this. I don't really have an interest in having homeowners control the parking spots in front of their house. Like the parking spot is the city's property. It's not the homeowner's property. But walking in, we're a town of walkers, and having cars parked in the residential area is a significant detractor of walking through town. Like it's significantly different, when I walk between, down my street or on Bob Street, as Bob was talking about, between like on Camino Real, between like 4th and Ocean. If there are cars parked on this side of the street, it's awful. Like it is seriously awful walking there. It's awful, it's not pleasant, and it's dangerous. Because we have, there's not really, there's kind of enough room for one car as long as it's not a Suburban, and it's a real issue. It's a real safety issue. So I'm really not interested in finding a solution that sort of helps push the cars out. Katie and Katie, it's good to see you here. Thank you for your working with the city to find the solutions, because I do, the business improvement district I think is a good idea, by the way. And I think that, I agree with everyone else's comments that employee parking is part of the problem. And I'll talk about that in a minute, but I think that when we have 1,000 people jockeying around for 1,000 spots, or 950 people jockeying around for 1,000 spots, it's the last 100 people that cause the problem. So having 850 people jockey for 1,000 spots leads to a significantly better outcome for everybody, congestion-wise and parking-wise, than having 950 people. So I think that skimming those 100 people off the top, or whatever that number is a really important part is a really important part of sort of addressing sort of both the immediate problem I think that the mayor is talking about and the longer term problem. And I also, speaking of sort of, longer term problems, I agree with Alessandra when she said that, let's avoid making this an urgent problem. I mean, we are where we are. Like, it's kind of a mess because, we have not been able to deal with this, as Paul said, forever. And so, finding a solution in the next 30 days is, finding a long-term solution in the next 30 days is probably not possible, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So I have a list of, let's see, the possible solutions, and I'm sorry if I missed some of them. Forest Theater, we received some email about people driving down to the Forest Theater down Mountain View. Mountain View is one of those roads that's literally awful to walk on. It's awful all the time because the employees park there. And this is not about, just not to sort of, the employees have to park somewhere and that's fine, but that road is awful, and it's too bad because it's a real shortcut, it's a real shortcut if you want to get to the Forest Theater from downtown. But I won't even walk, I can't even walk on it. Like I can't take the shortcut because there's no place to walk other than basically in the middle of the street. And I'm a little worried that Forest Theater, moving the problem to the suburbs and then having more congestion on Mountain View as people are sort of walking or driving back and forth, like that doesn't pass the sort of sniff test to me. Valet parking, I have to say I've never once ever heard the term minimally viable product in a council meeting or any meeting other than here. So kudos to that. But I agree with that. I agree for those of you that know what an MVP is. I think that that's a really interesting idea. And I think that, as I sit here, beginning of June, is it possible to get something done, to try it out this summer? Maybe it is. So that's the most sort of immediately interesting issues. So for the record, I think obviously there are legal and technical issues. I don't know who's going to be responsible for the safety of all the expensive cars that people bring in. I guess that's a function of the valet company. Like, okay, I know we have this issue during Car Week that there are cars that we will not tow because they're too expensive, and if someone leaves a Bugatti in the middle of the street, like it's just going to stay in the middle of the street. And I don't want to see, it's easy to imagine that there's going to be a problem with people leaving their $90,000 cars with a valet parker, and I don't know how that's going to work out. But then again, maybe those people will filter themselves out, and we can still get rid of those 100 cars by using a valet solution. So the valet solution, to me, doesn't need to work for everybody that wants to valet their car, but it needs to work for 100 people or whatever the goal is. And so I think that there might be some merit there. I'm worried about the usage, and this is still the valet thing. I'm worried about the usage of lots that are already being used. I would hate to see, I don't know. I admit I don't know what the status of the Forest Theater lot is during the week, but if people already park there, if employees already park there, I would hate to see that lot being taken over for valet parking. Like, I know that the Christian Science lot is sort of roped off, I think. And I think that that's sort of a valid use of a parking lot. If we can get there, if the valet company could work out the details. But if it's an unused lot, great. If it's an already used lot, less great. I would like to see, I don't know how this would pencil out, but I would like to see a little bit more of an analysis here at the council before we sort of ink some deal, like where the car is going to park and how many people are going to be involved. Like, I'd like to see the next level of analysis if we're going to sort of give our okay to the valet idea, and some of that is oversight. Some of that is the council's role as oversight, but a lot of it is like the having that stuff daylighted to the community will allow us to critique the idea and come up with a better idea. And I think that's important. I do agree. Alessandra talked about people waiting for their cars. You know, if you're parking cars at the high school, just to use one example, and the guys are like running up and down that hill, like that's going to be a pretty long wait. So I agree that that's an issue. Employee parking. Everyone thinks employees are the problem, and I don't want to really use the word problem, because employees are people and they're not problems. But I think that there's some work to be done there. You know, Bob talked about the MST shuttle program and there is MST rideshare program, and there is such a thing. We also have the bus. You know, the bus comes here, and you know, when I was thinking about that, there are a couple of issues. One, you know, I think we need to think about our parking problem in terms of the time of day, and so we sort of need to identify when during the day we have more of a parking problem than other. And so, for example, I appreciate that Mr. Burnett is having his employees park away from his restaurant, but his restaurant is only open for breakfast and lunch. And I don't know, for example, whether the congestion is worse. I suspect the congestion is worse late afternoon. And so I don't know if that solution is necessarily as good as a different solution that would be more targeted towards the late night. And that brings up two issues. One, the bus, which I was on the board of, and now you are, significantly curtails hours at night. So that makes it difficult for employees to take the bus, and it's not just a Carmel issue, it's a system issue. So getting someone from Carmel to, you know, you have to basically leave Carmel by 8 o'clock or you don't get out. And getting someone to Marina or Seaside or Monterey or wherever isn't going to work if they leave after 8. So maybe there's maybe there's a half of a solution there, and we need to figure out whether the other half is Uber or whatever, although that doesn't solve the congestion problem. So I think there's just some work to do with hourly work. And the second thing is, you know, and people that work hourly are subject to wild schedules. And there are restaurants that don't pay people 40 hours a week for whatever reason. And so they have these wild schedules that run, you know, they'll be like 8 to 1, 2 days a week, and 4 to 9, you know, 2 more days a week, and all day on Saturday or whatever it is. And that sort of irregularity in people's schedules makes it really difficult for people to commute by bus. Like, you cannot commute by bus if your hours are different every day, and if your hours are different every day, and you can't do that. And so I think that there's, you know, going back to sort of the 100-person problem, I think we need to figure out how to standardize the hours for enough people to get them to make commuting by bus a real possibility for people. And maybe that's the lunch crowd. You know, traffic is worse over lunch, and maybe if we had, you know, restaurants that had sort of standard lunch work hours like 10 to 2 or whatever, people could get back and forth on the bus. But I think that there is a significant amount of sort of structural work that needs to be done with the businesses to sort of work on these hours thing. And I can't emphasize enough, going back to this, I have a note to myself, where are the employees going to park? You know, everybody talks about employee parking, but where are they going to park? Like, you know, we can't really talk about, you know, it's not really legitimate to talk about employee parking and not talk about where the employees are going to park. Like, we have to provide them a spot to park. And I don't, you know, to Bob's point that he would rather have employees park in front of his house than tourists, absolutely agree. And I think that that's why, you know, we always come back to this, and I'll put in my plug, but I think that that's why paid parking is, you know, paid parking is this sort of a little bit of a stick to get people parking where they're supposed to park. Like, there's no other stick that's gonna do that.
Paid parking, allocating, the core of downtown to be paid parking will is an automatic mechanism to keep the employees from parking downtown. And maybe they can park in the outskirts of downtown. So maybe on the other side of the post office is okay, or down on Monteverdi or on Junipero that we talked about. But the central core, having paid parking in the central core, whether it's in front of Katie's or wherever, will automatically keep the wrong people from parking in those really valuable spots.
Jeff,
$2 an hour is enough.
Can you summarize so we can?
So I think that's the end. And the Del Mar Beach thing, that seems like a nightmare. So I'll stand with Alessandro on that.
Okay,
so that's it.
All right. I think that AB 413 has made us less safe for a number of reasons. Things seem to have gotten much worse since we did that. And I've gotten comments from people thinking that. I think however, if it's just talking to Chief Tomasi, one or two of us, and maybe that's where we start. I don't know if anybody's else, instead of making a big deal out of it, just whatever data you have right now that we could summarize that to see if we should quickly invest some effort in that. Because I don't think waiting 60 to 90 days for your report is good enough for me. But it obviously is important and needs to be done properly. It's a shared revenue model for both the parking lot and the valet service. And the initial thinking, and there are some contracts for both of them that I've given to Brian. They're fairly simple. The thinking was, if we were to do something like that, to start in a way that costs the city nothing, where Stephen takes all the risk. And then we could ratchet it up as we see the business model develop and what the volumes are. But eventually it ends up being like a 50-50 deal with Stephen taking all the expenses and the overhead of the employees and so on. And it could generate significant revenue. The lots that were on that list were not intended to be valet parking. The idea initially is to try to keep things east of Junipero so we're not going downtown and generating more traffic, unless the restaurants get involved and we're going to the restaurants, and then you start using lots that are more in town. But we're not planning to go up to the high school to drop people off or drop the cars off. Ride sharing vans to me are a really exciting idea, but Jeff, you pointed it out, like the hours, and a lot of people work multiple jobs, 2 or more. That's something that the restaurant folks could help define for us pretty quickly, I think. Like, is it even feasible? Because my brother was in one of those, and it was great for the time that he was living in that place. But if you could load people into vans, that's one way to get them off the street, right? They don't have a car. So if we could do that, and it sounds like the cost of the vans is pretty inexpensive or free.
I'll find out more.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's something worth exploring for sure. I mean, that's the simplest thing of all. If we can just get people to ride in together and not bring their car. Jeff's point about walking being awful with cars parked on the street was he comes up with the best things in the meetings I'm in with him, because it is awful. And we really have to consider that, because the cars are going, I live on 13th in San Antonio, and the cars are going all the way down there on all the streets some weekends. And then you have 3 dance kids shows in the same day, both Saturday and Sunday, which adds to it. And then there's a Forest Theater show on top of it. And by the way, I forgot this earlier, but one of the roles that the Community Activities Commission can play, among several other things, is to look at that. Like, when we do that, when we schedule 3 events at the exact same time, and we're closing off streets along with it, it's debilitating to the whole town, and we really need to take a close look at that. And we're putting people on that commission that can figure that out. One of them's here. So I came into this presentation with the goal of saying that parking is a problem and should be a priority, however urgent or otherwise. And I'd sort of like to get a thumbs up on that.
Yeah, Dale, I think it's a priority. I think we need to keep going with something. Having listened to my colleagues, I think you should keep at this. I would encourage you to get with Katie and Nia and expand something there. The use of the Community Activities Committee on this topic might be very interesting because this is activity in our community. So, and we're redefining that group. So there might be some interest there.
Yep.
And I just maybe.
Well, you can't do activities if you don't have a place for people to park their car.
No, it's
and we've created
correct.
that situation in town.
Hans with the minimally viable product is it's a good analogy because you're right. You can be agile and just create something and react in real time. So I would consider that perhaps the thing to explore. And I agree with you that I would be open to just trying it.
The valet?
Yeah.
Despite your
no, I have those are concerns. They're legitimate concerns. That doesn't mean I'm opposed to it. Okay. I think a lot of it is just, it comes down to it really comes down to where are the parking lots that you use. You know, if you can get the Presbyterian Church, that's perfect. If you can get the...
It's dynamic. That's the other thing. It's got to be very dynamic.
Yeah.
And I agree, the Forest Theater, I mean, I thought about that, but you can go up 8th. You don't have to go up Mountain View. We can open up the back gate and have people going that way.
Forest Theater might be a great spot for employee parking.
I'm starting to think
the
that
shuttle,
because
that's a lot less intense to the neighborhood.
And it would have to be somewhat dynamic, and we'll discuss that. I'll discuss that with Katie.
Sorry, so that's my reactions.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, yeah, I'm going to send you, I don't think we ever produced the EULA report. So I'm going to send it to you. It was never agendized.
Yeah, it was
so
strangely missing.
Yeah. So it'll add to the body of information on this topic because there was a lot of research and public outreach and education. I'm going to send you the design guidelines for the public right away. For some reason, they're on our website. And then even though I was listening intently to all of your words, I did an employee survey in my head while I was sitting here. And I'm going to send you my estimation. And we probably have about 65, 70 employees that are here, city employees, I'm sorry, on a daily basis. Some of whom park at the library. Nobody parks in the business district, with the exception of me periodically. And but I'll send you that just for information purposes. But everybody is pushed into the residential neighborhood, and we park all day. So anyway, really good discussion.
I've got to get some more
add one
thumbs up or some thumbs down.
For the valet, if we do try that, I definitely recommend that it's a pilot program with a clear end date, whether it's 3 months or 4 months, something like that. Just make that
We're
clear.
thinking 3, 4 at the outside.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you slightly favorable to that?
Well, I'm listening to the rest of the council, and they're open to trying it as long as it's with a clear end date and we get a report afterwards on that. And then in the meantime, maybe after those 3 months, we can also get the chief's report. I think that's very important for all of these issues. His analysis of AB 413, his analysis of speed limits, his analysis of reducing parking spaces, and anything else that he can add. Also enforcement, that's also an issue. How many people do we have that actually can be doing enforcement on a daily basis, or is it a half day? Is it only weekends? I mean, all of these things need to be factored in, and I think he's a key player in all of this. So if we can set up something that gives him enough time, maybe with the end of the pilot program, and have him do a report for us.
Okay, I think there should be more report outs than after 90 days with the valley. I think we want to have reports out frequently, internally at least, with Chip and Brandon. Okay, so do we have 5-0 on this parking should be a priority?
Valet.
No, parking, just period parking. It's not on the list.
I do share Hans's concern that it wasn't on our priorities list. We had our meeting at the end of February. We can't overburden staff, so is there something we want to pull back on? We can't just in the middle of, what we are in June now, just add something to that list.
We're talking about the budget tomorrow night. That's an interesting place to have that conversation.
Yeah, we can do that.
I mean, so far this has taken no staff time other than chatting with Chip briefly. So I will promise that until you give us more feedback on any program, that staff time will be discussions with Chief Tomasi and
Ken, please.
And Ken. So I mean, I do not intend to take this to be a big staff thing in the next 2 weeks, so everybody seems to think that parking should be on the list. Correct? Okay, I've gotten 5 nods, Chip. And I got at least, I think I got maybe 5, including me, on the valet to do a little more exploration.
Yeah, a little more exploration. Clearly, we'll need to get Mr. Pierrick involved, from the liability and liability standpoint, and work with, Anna's not here, but land use perspective. Brandon can get us a waiver with the coastal commission, Chief Tomas. There's moving parts, but yeah.
So we're talking a little bit of
legwork. Yes, sir. We'll have to.
Okay.
100%, sir.
Yes. Okay. And it also sounded like working with Katie on the employee side of it, and Kenny certainly will be a good resource for that, to first of all explore how many we have, what's currently going on, and what creative ideas could we do quickly to make sure that they're not parking directly downtown, and hopefully do it in a way that we're not inundating neighborhoods and making it difficult to walk and that sort of thing. It sounded like I didn't get much input on the paid parking at Del Mar Beach. I didn't hear a lot of positive comments on that.
That sounds like it could, I might regret it. We might regret it. It didn't sound like it was.
I mean, it's a bad situation, but maybe that's just what it has to be.
Whoever said it, I'm not sure the kiosk actually solves the problem. It could be worse. So I'm just saying I'm not sure it's low fruit at this point.
Do we get 4 of you think that's not low fruit? I just want to know where to spend time digging through this.
I don't think it's a low fruit. I think yeah. Okay, I'm not going to try to talk you into it. I'm putting the ideas out there.
Okay, I think that's good. We've got parking as a priority, valets, workforce, getting Katie to start taking an active role in setting up some work groups, and that could go. And we also got some suggestions that when it convenes, that the Community Activities Commission could play a role in helping pull all this together and in evaluating events and their impact on the city. All right, excellent. I'm happy. Good job, everybody. And I love this council. I really do. I mean, you have to admit that was a pretty good discussion, and we brought up a lot of good things. I'm sorry that it wasn't properly agendized and all that, but we wanted to get it out there and not take staff time. So
it was agendized just fine.
No, I mean agendized, okay. but putting staff reports and all that together, because we didn't want to take staff time in. But we'll try to do a better job of that in the future.